Baba, what are we playing?
Ya lo sabéis, it's Halo Day.
Yeah, one sec.
He's playing football, isn't he?
You know he fancies himself a footballer.
Oh, whatever. Look, your love makes me strong, but your hate makes me invincible. All right, let's get on Halo then.
Let's go.
Ready.
Dale.
You went back this time, right?
Chill, chaval. I won't ghost you this time.
I'm going hallway.
I got right.
Uno fuera.
Oh, another one down. Lock in. Next kill wins it.
Where is he? No lo veo.
Alicia, do you hear that?
Pick on him, top left.
Bet. I'll push it. He's one shot.
Game over.
Got him.
Well played.
Same time tomorrow then.
We'll see.
Bye-bye.
Ciao. Nos vemos.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, and welcome to round number 2 of the Logitech Pro Invitational qualifying series. And after round number 1 is in the books, there's a few drivers that'll be happy, there's a few drivers that feel confident, and now the nerves might start to settle in for some. Up and down the grid of a 4-round qualifying series, only 20 can progress to the Logitech Pro Invitational series, and who those 20 will be will start to shape up much more firmly after tonight. Scotty Rankin behind the microphone yet again. Tonight we off alongside of Stephen Sandman Clark and Jake Burton yet again. And Sandman, I tell you what, little French countryside circuit. It's out in the middle of nowhere. It's out in the sticks. But this is a banger. This one is famous for some of the Formula One action that's gone in years gone by.
Absolutely, Scotty, and hello to you, hello to everyone. Yeah, this track is an absolute pearler. I really like it. I think I start to show my age when I speak to some of the younger folks of today when I mention this racetrack and Formula One, and they look at me with a blank stare and think, what am I talking about? But this is an absolute cracker for the calendar, and I think it really suits the V8s, and looking forward to seeing how this race plays out.
Yeah, a little bit of chatter actually up and down the grid. I've spoken to a number of people, and the general consensus among drivers is there's not actually all that much confidence coming into this one. In terms of V8 supercars and iRacing and the experience these guys have got to pull from, the supercars have only ever been here once. That means that the numbers that are around, the setups, the lap times, the charts, if you went into the supercar a year ago, well, you'd have never done a lap here in terms of that one. It's not a course that's all that well known from a number of different other classes, and not without its experience there for the drivers as well. Jake, it's tricky because there's a lot of late braking zones, there's a lot of little switchbacks. This is a course that tests the driver, the car, and the setup.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You need something pretty well rounded around this place. We've got, massive braking zones into that really tight hairpin that we see sort of halfway around the track. We've got the chicanes to deal with, or as Alonso coined years ago, the chickens. But that last chicane there is really, really tough, especially in qualifying, because the start-finish line is right after it, and you can actually sort of attack it really aggressively and get a terrible run down the straight, but it'll get you to the line faster. So there's a lot of little intricacies to this track, and it's also a track that's not only new to the iRacing service, but also one that we haven't raced these cars on historically very often. So lots of people driving this track for the first time, I imagine, so going to be a tricky one.
Yeah, it's going to test the drivers. That is your layout, and as you saw, it's right in the middle of France. Circuit's been open since 1960, with the current layout in operation since 2003. The course length, 4.4 kilometres, with 17 turns in a clockwise direction. The run down through turn number 1, that's the pit lane exit you're looking at right there. There's sort of a little kink beforehand, and then there's this pit lane exit that goes all the way out and around the outside of turn 2, turn 3. It's a tricky little pit. I would say the pit lane exit is probably going to be one of those ones that's really, really interesting to sort of note. Normally it's on a straight here, Sandman. This one is on the outside of a corner. So going through turn 1, you pick up a little bit of time. Then the long way around turn 2, that is not going to be easy.
Absolutely. It feels like the old commentator's adage where it says this racetrack has a little bit of everything. It actually does this time, because you can look at it like the hairpins, the undulation, the fast sweepers. There's so much for drivers to think about. And exactly like you said, that pit exit on that sweeper, that's something to think about when you're rejoining the racetrack, where you've got cold tyres and all the rest of it, and then keeping an eye out for that traffic that's coming behind you.
How about that risk management? That is going to be a huge, huge factor. The first time that I ever commentated a race here, the race lead was decided on the final lap as we went through that final chicane. Why? There's a slowdown penalty. Well, there's not enough time to clear that one before you get to the start-finish line. The race win went the way of the guy that was sitting in second place on the very last lap of the race, which means that there is a little bit of risk management out there. Incident points are important, Jake Burt. We don't talk about them quite a lot, but brake management is a big, big one. You can pinch a brake just about any corner around here.
Yeah, that's right. And as I say, this hairpin that you see the guys coming into now, that's going to be a really, really tricky one tonight. You've got front locking into there. If you're going for a pass, you're probably going to take 2 or 3 cars with you, is probably my guess. So that's probably going to be the biggest challenge, I'd say, is managing the front brake locking into there. That's going to be really tight.
And I'm assuming squaring that corner off and getting a really nice pointer drive off, because even though another car making a huge mistake down at their hairpin as well, there's actually about 4 or 5 different lines through this hairpin, and all of them have an advantage to them. None of them is just, it's locked this line in, it's the best line in. Some drivers with a setup that likes the wider sort of corners are absolutely going to be trying to keep as much momentum up. Some of them are going to be trying to break it, turn it, and then point and shoot is going to be the goal. Some of them are going to try and use the curbing all the way on the left-hand side. Some of them will be staying away from that curbing. This is one of those tracks, again, you said it tests everything, mashing it. Oh my God. I get the feeling we're going to be looking at this camera shot most of the night here, Sam.
Yeah, it's funny. It's exactly what we're talking about. It's just some of the struggles that these teams and drivers are going to have to put up with. And we've already seen it just in the short amount of time that we've been talking about it. Now, Jake, you're probably the one to talk about as far as this braking zone. Obviously, the drivers want to move far left as they can. But what is it like, and is it dangerous as far as trying to brake on those ripple strips to try and get the car settled?
I think from what I've heard from our guys, I think it's pretty stable using that curb into there, but you've been on the brakes for sort of 50 or 100 metres by the time you actually get to that curb, so you don't really want to sort of turn the car while you're braking, so it's probably not one you're going to use a huge amount. In addition to this hairpin, actually, the one after it is probably even harder. I'm not sure if we can get a shot of that one a little bit further down, but the long left-hand hairpin that we see a little bit later on is exactly what I was just talking about. Massive turning and braking at the same time. If you're going to lock a front tonight and miss an apex, it's going to be at that one.
It's nearly like one of those test track corners that you see normally, and just about all the manufacturers right around the world will have one of these corners, but it's sort of, as the corner goes on, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter and really wraps back and around on itself. I wonder if we've actually got the track map that's sort of available. We might be best able to highlight it from that track map yet again. It's sort of one of those ones that the aerial shot tells quite a lot of the story in terms of this one. But yeah, this is going to be a difficult track. It's sports car racing here is actually quite successful, but things with a little bit more horsepower tend to not create all that much. We're talking a little bit about the downforce. We're talking a little bit about the dirty air effect here last week. Well, you do need a little bit of wing on the cars around here, don't you, Jake?
Yeah, I think, you look at that first sector, you've got this, in contrast to the 2 hairpins we've been talking about, you've got this long sweeping double apex left-hander, and then this long, just feels like it goes forever, sort of double apex right-hand hairpin. It's sort of exactly as Sandman said a little while ago, actually. You do get a bit of everything here. We've got corners like the one we're looking at now, where we go all the way down to first gear and slow the car to like 50 kilometers an hour. And then we've got a 240k an hour sweeper, all on the same track. So, I think you just sort of try and make your car balanced and hope and pray from there, really.
And I think that's some of the stuff that drivers like about, I think will fall in love with this racetrack if they haven't done too many laps, because there's so much things and so many different corners to look at. You know, like I think it's a bit of a driver's dream as far as the difference of the corners and the technicality of it all.
Yeah, so I think we've got that track map that we'll go back to, and really the sweeper that we're sort of talking about. You see, there's a little kink there at 1. There's another kink there in between 1 and 2, which is actually more of a turn 2 than turn number 2 it is. But hey, we'll bend to American rulings and call turn 2 and turn 3 turn 2 and turn 3. Estoril, as it's known, that leads onto that long flowing back straight. The hairpin that we've just been watching is down at turn number 5. Adelaide, we'll be looking there quite a lot. The chicane at 7 and 8 is another place where mistakes can be made, slow down penalties can be picked up. And this turn 9, and you'll even see, because MotoGP have come here as well, you'll even see the long lap penalty on the outside, a small strip. If you do follow a little bit of MotoGP, they can serve a long lap penalty out and around the outside of turn number 9 is the corner that we're talking about. It just really continues to fold back in on itself. There's chicanes at both ends of the track. There's flip-flops. There's you know, and one of the elements we haven't even talked about yet is actually turn 14 and how slow and how tight it is. And there is the shot. Yeah. Right there of the long braking sweeper and how much it doubles. And it really doubles back in itself, Jake.
You look at that corner, even if you just look at it from now before you've even driven the track, and if you're a V8 supercar driver, that just screams nightmare to you. That's an absolute disaster. It's sort of on the way downhill, slightly on the way in as well, and you've come off a really high load sort of chicane where the weight's all on the right-hand side of the car, and then you've got to turn the car to the left and get it stopped and slowed down and drop 2 gears. It's just, it's really the ultimate challenge, I think, just about of any corner that I think I've ever driven in this car, to get the car stopped without locking inside front. It's an absolute nightmare.
And then it leads into another fast-flowing section where you go down the hill and then back up the hill. That's a brilliant, actually, shot of this circuit and sort of tells you what it's about. There's a lot of open spaces, a lot of open areas. Safety car percentage, boys. I'm going to pitch something a little bit out there to you. I think this race might actually be quite clean. I'm thinking about the only way we're really probably going to get a safety car is a major incident or somebody downshifting too early. Sam, and you think I think low safety car percentages here? I think maybe 1. I don't think we'll get 2.
Yeah, I would think so. Being that it's a fast track and there is a fair bit of room on this racetrack compared to some others that we see. Yeah, I think you're probably right. I guess it all comes down to the start too and how chaotic it could be. But I think probably you might hold your breath into the hairpin for the first time. But I don't think it'll be that much of an incident where it could cause a safety car. But I guess you never know.
What about you, Jake, in terms of safety car percentages? Are you thinking maybe a little bit high just because of some of the newer elements in a track that hasn't been raced as much?
I'm hesitant to say, to be honest, Scott. At the end of the day, as I say, I've never seen a V8 supercar race at this track, so I've got no idea what to expect, much like probably most of the guys here have no idea who are racing as well. It could be a complete mess. We could see, incidents every... So we just see Jordan Ross aboard a lap losing the rear in first gear off that hairpin that we mentioned. It could be all over the place, or it could be the cleanest race we've ever seen. That's the cool thing about going to a track that we haven't seen before, is you get that element of unpredictability.
And how good was that? That shot that we just saw, there's a huge rise and then immediately a fall coming out of that hairpin as well. So traction out of the corner, then with a little bit of throttle facing because you're not quite up to the point where the downforce takes over. Practice numbers are in the book by and large. We've got a little bit more than a minute left to run, and Anthony Wiesema's going to light those rear tyres up again. So rear traction, already the limiting factor here. I mean, that supercar is really in a nutshell, but we're seeing... I can't recall a time where we've seen this many drivers make this many mistakes with getting the rear underneath them.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to that little bit of unpredictability too, like we touched on. We don't have too much data at this racetrack, so I'm sure teams would have been busily testing as much as they could, but it's just that factor of I guess, not being used to this racetrack, having a crack with setup. But I reckon all these drivers will be wishing they were in a GT or something with a little bit of traction control and everything else. But here we are with V8s. They're going to earn their money tonight.
Well, this is one of the unfolding stories over the last week or so. You might have heard a little bit of something if you were listening along to the interviews of Jared Philsell last time out from Road Atlanta. Well, it's been confirmed. Speed Cafe has come on board as a sponsor for the new team entering the esports scene, and Philsell won't be the only car when we get all the way through to the Logitech Pro Invitational. Once we get out of the qualifying stage, the Lobs esports crew have got the green and black on board, and that's actually kind of an exciting thing because A, I love green and black, and B, we've got some media attention coming our way here, Sam, in the sim racing world.
Yeah, that's very cool, and it's very Stake-esque, isn't it? You know, we've seen a release with Formula One with Stake gone for the old green and black, and yeah, it's good to see the colours of Speed Cafe on board the Logitech series. That's good to see.
Righto, final preparations, final moments in terms of practice. Your qualifying session, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, 5 seconds before it will get underway. You're about to see everything pop out and all the drivers run through to the end of pit lane. And Jake Burton, we talked last week about positioning in that queue. I think positioning this week in the queue, I don't necessarily think it's going to be who you're around. I think it's going to be probably the mistakes that you're around. Is there any sort of drivers you're more confident following on these qualifying laps?
Well, ultimately, I think you know who's fast. You know, if you can hitch yourself a ride behind Jared Filsell or something like that behind one of these sessions, you'll be laughing. That's sort of what you're hoping for. Ultimately, this track probably isn't quite as draft dependent as what we saw at Road Atlanta last week. So following a car may not necessarily be the best way to go about it. So I think, honestly, around this place, you probably just want to find some space. You know, so I think you look at that chicane in the middle of the track at 12 and 13. That corner there is going to be a real corner where vision matters. And I think being up behind another car is actually going to hinder you, if anything.
Mate, just looking at the screen too, it's a little bit overcast out there. So I would imagine these teams would be pretty keen to get out there and put a lap down before that UV hits the racetrack.
Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead, Jake.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think definitely, you know, it seems to have, clouds seem to come out, but it's not a super hot track anyway. It's obviously winter in France, so it's 23 degrees track temp, so shouldn't see a huge variation, but you still want to put the lap down early before the rubber starts to go down.
Immediately have a look at the scrambling as everyone's lurching for a little bit of clean air and the checking up. Look at the 6 cars all on a bump nose to tail on the run down to the Adelaide hairpin, and they've all managed to get themselves out. One of these cars is actually down at the back end of the field, might be sort of where we keep half an eye as the green Logitech car goes through the front of the screen there as well. That might actually be the place to be. And was that Sebastian Vandel? It was the last car that was coming through at the tail end of the field. There's one way you're guaranteed to get out and get a clean bit of air, and that's to be running way back down the back end. Well, everyone's trying to keep tyres underneath them and get that track position. At the moment, it's going to be Phil Sell who will lead us as we come down to the final couple of corners. Qualifying for round number 2 underway, and the first laps about to be started. Getting the drive off the last couple of corners, making sure you don't pick up an incident point. No slowdown penalties is a great way to start the lap. Qualifying is go for round number 2 of the qualifying Invitational series. And boys, where are your eyes immediately turned? Because obviously Jared Filsell's won. But is there a driver that you're watching this week that looks to try and move themselves up the board, Sandman?
Oh, dude, yeah, obviously everyone's looking at Jared. They know that he's going to be stronger and competitive, but there's so many great names up and down through the field, and that's what's great about this qualifying series. And of course, that's, I guess, a testament to this series that we had last year, is that, you know, we had qualifying drivers come through and made a name for themselves. So I'm hoping we see much the same. There's no one standing out just right now, but there's so many that could be.
Well, it was Griffin Gardner who finished in second place last week. He's not going to be here this time. And now we're still starting to settle ourselves down on and in. The middle of the lap, and it looks reasonably good. Riley Bilson's going to be the second car in the queue.
Cars look fairly good. Like, I mean, we've just been looking at Jared on screen for the moment, but his car looks pretty good at the moment. Obviously, I think he was top of the timesheets in practice before we went to quali. So obviously he's feeling pretty confident with his car. Look at it bouncing up over those curbs too. It looks pretty good. Looks reasonably settled, but it'll give us some sort of idea as he comes towards the last part of the lap, just to see what sort of banker he can put down.
Well, I've got some breaking news actually coming the way, and it was a driver that struggled last week in qualifying as well and had issues. Matthew Bowler has had a small PC glitch as we've switched over to qualifying. He's not in the session at the moment. So for a driver that was in the Pro Series last year and was looking good, qualifying dramas in round 1 and round number 2 is going to put a lot of pressure down. Phil Sell's going to cross the line. 37.132 will be the early market. You'll need to get into the 37s to qualify with inside the top 10. 37.9 went down for Riley Bilson as well. There's Maloney, 2/10 back. And now the times will start to come through. And one of the drivers we're keeping an eye on as well was the Synergy Sim Racing driver of Jordan Ross. He was quick in terms of the practice session. What's he got on his first flying lap? It's going to be a 38.202, so there was some dramas in that lap there as well. That is not the cleanest lap he's ever put together.
How heartbreaking is that? Like, with Jake, you know, you put yourself in that position, you've done practice, you get ready for qualifying, and then the PC, you know, has an issue. I guess that's our 20-cent part, isn't it, that stops us joining a session like this. That'd be heartbreaking.
Oh, for sure. Fortunately, there's going to be enough time. I think he'll get back in and have another run, but still always off-putting when you go off sequence. We saw that a lot last year as well. I faced it myself in a couple of the rounds. You go off sequence in qualifying, you get stuck behind cars. It just absolutely kills you on those flying laps.
Yeah, well, a couple drivers have managed to put a reasonable lap together. 37.132 was the marker from Phil Sell. Bo Albert's now going to come through, put himself in a 4th spot, and he qualified way down the order. Last week, he drove through the field phenomenally to be up inside the top 20 and deep inside the top 20. This time out, he's looking to start his qualifying much further up, and that puts a lot of confidence in the back pocket too, Sandman.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you can see when you put that banker down, it takes the pressure off for the rest of the session if you know you've done something decent.
Replay is going to come through from Bo Albert, and whoa, that was just barely inside the limits, and that was just barely enough. You see how soon after that final chicane the start-finish line is. He had just enough room, got the lap in, and then probably as soon as that lap was finished, picked himself up an up-track penalty, and out of our 40 or so cars that are in the server already tonight, we're already missing laps from about 10 to 11 of them, Jake. And if they're off sequence early, they're in trouble. And all of a sudden, the pressure starts to build. Talk to us about managing pressure. Qualifying pressure is a little bit different to race pressure.
Well, it's what makes Jared Filsell so good, isn't it? Like, take a look at that. He's gone out and done a 37.17 in practice, and on his first qualifying lap, he's actually just improved on that, but basically matched the lap. He's gone straight out, matched his lap from quali, and actually bettered it. He's the only person just about in the whole field, probably up until Andre Yusuf's done a pretty good time. It's just about matched his practice, but just about everyone else is, you know, a few tenths off what they've done. So his ability to just execute under pressure, especially on these technical circuits, just makes him so good.
Well, drivers have managed to get back into the pit lane. Now it's this crawl lap. Preventative tyre wear. Don't want to get too much heat going through the tyres. Jake Maloney's one of the first that gets back out. Phil Sell's actually popped out a little bit deeper in the queue, so he's a little bit more patient with looking for where that space was in terms of things. But if you have a look at Jake Maloney, he's surged ahead. So he's now the new car that leads the way. Scott Gamble's another driver we'll be keeping half an eye on. Had a very, very dramatic and drama-induced race number 1. Talked to him prior to tonight. Said, look, the focus is just get back inside that top 20, make sure that we're clean, make sure we're consistent. We might breathe a little bit on the racing and settle in, put some points down in the book. And of the drivers yet to set a time, he was out there. Another one was Aaron Borg, Brian Borg, Sean McNamara, Hayden Veld, Richard Hamstead's a developing story in terms of this series. Bowler is now out on track. We've already talked about him. Josh Thomas, Seth Brown, Chad Lewis is another one, and so is Ken Latta. There's a number of known drivers within the Australian V8 supercar racing scene within that list there, Sandman.
Now it's interesting to see how they go about attacking this last part of the qualifying session. You know, if you've had a good one and you've managed to put down a banker, then you can breathe a sigh of relief. But if you find yourself a little bit further down the grid, that's the last thing you want to find. You know, if you can just take a little bit of pressure off yourself and find a couple of positions, obviously you want that in your back pocket. Going into a racetrack that not many people have actually done racing on. They may have done laps and everything else, but to have actually race miles and have door-to-door action, that's a different story.
There's one driver as well that we're talking quite well about at the end of road at Atlanta was actually Zach Rattray White, known for his GT racing, and indeed has won his biggest performance, his biggest achievement that he's most proud of in terms of sim racing is winning the 24 hours of Nürburgring in the top split as well. So it's a big achievement. Unknown in terms of the V8 supercar world. Managed to put a lap time down that was 16th best in session number 1. Had a very quiet day at the office. Sort of just put the points together. And round number 1, lots of opportunity. And we're keeping our eyes on Scott Gamble as well. Yeah, because this is currently a flying lap that he's putting together. That will be the run down to turn number 14, the Chateau d'Eau. And now it's down towards the Lash Sea chicane. Whether or not he can put this one together. And it's a downhill run all the way down here into turn number 15. Pull it up. Make sure you carry some momentum. Run wide. Square the car off. Point it straight as you come back through the chicane. Over 16, through 17, to the line. 38.0. That's a reasonable lap there from the driver of the 5.43. And that slots him all the way up into 13th. That will make him breathe a sigh of relief, Sandman.
Yeah, absolutely. And how good did that car look bouncing over those curbs too? So good peace of mind just to keep his head. You know, he knew he was on a decent lap, got over those curbs nicely, wasn't too aggressive, and managed to put in a banker. So that's good.
Yeah, Craig Schultz is going to come to the line as well. Where does that lap take him? Doesn't look like there was any improvement from Schultz there right now as well. I tell you what, the run of drivers, the driver that's at the head of the timing is actually Jordan Ross at the moment in that group. There's probably one car a little bit further up the road, so Aaron Berg as well. And Phil Sell was on a banger, and he's going to lock it up on the way into pit lane as well. Well,
he aborted that at the last second, but he was purple in the first couple of sectors, so he was on to actually go faster, but then aborted at the last minute.
Jordan Ross is going to better his lap as well. Jumps all the way up to P4 at this point in time. Was 16th prior to that lap. There's a couple of drivers aborting in the final sector. And have a look how busy it is for Zach Vlashbaum down here coming through the final two corners. Run to the start-finish line. Doesn't improve from the driver right there out of Vermilion Sim Racing. And there's a number of them up and down the field as well as they start to make inroads into the V8 supercar scene within Australia. Stenberg's getting a lap together. Anthony Visma as well. Quite well known, quite well loved around the V8 veterans community. Does a lot of race control duties and is a big heart of the community. A lovely, lovely person to sit down and chat to. What's he going to be able to put together for us here over the chicane? That is going to be something we're going to see all night long. Cars bouncing over that final chicane. 38.232. Stays 24th, so a little bit of an improvement. And we're halfway through qualifying, so there's only going to be another 2 laps, I think, for every driver in the session right now.
I'm surprised how many drivers are actually as close as they are to each other. I mean, I know there's obviously advantages of getting a little bit of a toe, especially some of these long straightaways. But Jake, are you surprised? Would you want to get some clear air? Because they seem to be a lot of them bunched up.
Yeah, they are, but I don't know. Maybe there is. Maybe there's more time in tow than I think. But I also think another factor is at the end of the day, we got, 42 odd cars at this track in 4.4 kilometres worth of distance. So you're going to be crowded anyway. As we're seeing here, 2 guys seem to be tripping over each other a little bit.
Yeah.
But just finding clear space might be difficult.
See, these guys battling as hard as they are, they're obviously costing each other time. So there's really no point, I guess, unless you've had an absolute disaster of a lap and you need to put a lap in. You can see he's aborted the lap there. But when you start tripping over each other, you really do lose a lot of time.
And this was one of the biggest stories as well that we heard coming out of the qualifying series, was that the first ever father-son duo behind the wheel. Well, Blake Delaney back out. And back attempting to put some time down behind his number 08 Fishy Motorsports machine. Son Ty Delaney is currently at the spot ahead of him on the timing tower at P27 and P28. So, well, I mean, that's it, the family. If you're that close together, you can say, hey, well, at least we were as successful as each other.
Yeah, but it's bragging rights, isn't it, at the dinner table? Yeah. So I reckon that's great. Good on them. It's good to see a father-son duo. That's great.
And I was talking to a pair. There was a little bit of debate back and forth, actually, about fast food choices. Because, well, for Ty, his fast food preference was McDonald's, and for Dad Blake Delaney, pizza. How do you debate that one out? Well, one of the ways to decide, I suppose, is who finishes further up on the racetrack.
Yeah, that's it. Whoever finishes higher than the other one, then they get to choose for dinner.
Would that motivate you, Jake? Would you put a lot more hours worth into qualifying if you got to pick what was for dinner tomorrow night?
Oh, maybe. I think the advantage of living with your parents is that you may not get to choose, but you also may not get to pay for it. So that's pretty beneficial in my mind. But interesting little battle between those two. The guy I'm watching at the moment is Richard Hampstead. He's in a bunch of traffic and he's yet to put a lap time down in this session. And let's not forget, guys, he got a drive-through penalty when he was running in the top 5 in the last race for speeding on the way out of pit lane. So this is like do or die for Richard. If he wants to be in this series, this lap needs to be good.
Is he on a flyer at the moment? I don't necessarily know. We've just seen the traffic all get out the way of him at the moment. Well, it does seem that his lap time is absolutely active, and there is currently 6.5 minutes in terms of qualifying. So if this one's no good, he will get one more opportunity to put a lap down. And I'm pretty sure that's him displaying his preferred fast food on his helmet there with the KFC chicken nuggets. Was that maybe more of a popcorn chicken? We'll see whether or not he's got a nugget of wisdom left in this lap as he gets down to turn number 15. And have a look at the run through here. The use of the runoff areas. It's required to get the lap time out of here. Fastest lap of the session. Well, it was in the 1.3s. It's now in the 0.3s for Jared Filsell. He's going to better himself. Stands atop the pile by 0.3 of a second at this point in time. And for Richard Hamstead, I don't know, boys. I just don't know that he's going to be necessarily happy with that one. You'll get one more opportunity. It's 12th position, so it is a lap. It's better than nothing here, Sandman.
I'd be taking it considering that he had put a banker in. So if you told me that I had a last-ditch effort and put me P12, I'd take it.
And we'll throw the championship standings on the board, which will really be round number 1 standings in terms of things. But we will actually have some live championship standings working for you throughout the course of the night. Brian Borg is looking to improve on his lap, does improve by half a second. He'll jump out of 36, and we'll see where Borgie will end up. It is going to still be 36th with that improvement in terms of lap time. 38.2, there's 5 drivers in the 38.2s and 1 driver just ahead of them by 0.02 of a second in the 38.2. Sorry, Borgie will jump to 27th after that lap time as everything starts to settle on down. Seth Brown on the screen at the moment. There's a number of drivers. There's action in the pit lane. Where do you look at this point in time, Sandman? Because Seth's trying to put himself a lap together, the Altus Australia driver out of Coffs Harbour.
Yeah, I'd be looking for that clear air. I know that Jake and we were talking about that before as far as just trying to see about getting some... Oh, he's just dived into the pits there, Seth. So I think that's what these drivers will do, to quickly dart in, get a new set of tyres and have that last-ditch effort.
Righto, last times in the board. Remember, lap time, 1:37, 1:38, 1:40 to do a fast lap. And you can start that one, provided the checkered flag waves after you've started the lap. So if you've got 5 seconds left on the timing board, when you cross that start-finish line to start your final flying lap, it will count. Chad Lewis had a dramatic exit from round number 1, unfortunately tagging the wall heavily off the hairpin at Road Atlanta. Can he make some sort of inroads? Was feeling confident, lots of effort put in just to make the series, and now after round 1, he'd be a little bit on the back foot. We'll see how he progresses. Dave Kirby, the number of drivers here out of the V8 veterans as well, as we go from Chad Lewis to Kirby. Both of those guys are drivers. And I tell you what, I've got more of an update for you from Matty Bowler. He's had further dramas. So the PC is the 20 cent part tonight, Sandman.
Oh, no. That's it, yeah. I just absolutely feel for him. That's gut-wrenching when something like that happens and it's out of your hands. You just got to feel for him.
Well, the good news is he did manage to get a lap time in, and it currently sits inside the top 10. So, he can breathe a sigh of relief. Another issue's come up, and it's driver of the 097, which is actually Forzen El Nabi, is receiving a 10-second time penalty to be added to his race time, and that's for impeding during qualifying. That you're just seeing on the screen right now. So that will be served at his first pit stop during the race. That's going to change things up. He will be not looking for a safety car early on the piece, because that will ruin his race right together.
Yeah, absolutely. That changes everything too, especially put in the position that he's P3 at the moment. So, yeah, I wouldn't want that hanging over my head, to be honest, because 10 seconds, that's a big whack. So at the end of the day, he's got to serve that. So we can see a replay here. I wonder if this is... Oh, we're trying to work out here.
That doesn't look like impeding there, unless it's there.
Yeah, so looks like he was on an outlap there, and it's tricky. And we were talking about how all these cars bunched up. It does make it a little bit difficult, but at the end of the day, I guess, he's tried his best to get out of the way, but at the end of the way, the stewards have deemed that he's got that penalty. So exactly like you said, Scott, you don't want to see that early safety car, because that could make things really difficult for him.
Well, at the moment, in terms of things, we enter the final 2 minutes in 10 seconds' time. Phil Sell still has control. Jake Maloney sits second. Forzen El Nabi. Bo Albert from Damian Johnson. It's good to see some pace out of Damian Johnson again. That will be confidence-inducing for him. Looking at Dan Hall on screen at the moment, just outside the top 20. Is this lap going to better? That didn't look like confidence coming through the final chicane. Wasn't attacking it quite as aggressively as he would have liked. And Connor Nixon, the driver who just about failed to set a time from Road Atlanta because of his 20-cent part, was a mouse in his case. It was preventing him from being able to load into his car and actually get into the sim.
Oh, that's a first.
Yeah, normally it's pedals, normally it's hardware. Take it out, plug it back in again. Mouse is a little bit more difficult. Can't really click anything. You've got to hope your hotkeys are in order. Anyway, Nixon's going to get to the line, looking to improve. And does improve. Moves himself from 33rd all the way up to 20th. for the driver of the 168 out of Vermilion Motorsports, and that will be a little bit of confidence. An old friend of his, Sebastian Vandel. These two drivers raced together a fair bit when they first got on the sim together. Both of them quite young. Vandel's big into his go-karting from a young age. And how about this for the driver that had the drive-through penalty? No, he's going to abort that lap as well. So with a minute left on the clock, that will be qualifying over there for the 097 of El Nabi. There will not be time to get back out there and get to the stripes, get another lap started. Who is starting a lap? It was 7th place Jordan Ross just across the start-finish line, so he will look to start a lap. This will be important for Vandel, and if the nerves haven't risen already, Jake, well, how do you balance yourself off? Keep yourself settled in these final phases of qualifying if you know you've got more in the tank.
I think you just got to execute. I know it sounds silly and obvious, but
big slide for Vandel, and back to you, Jake.
It's just exactly what I spoke about last week. You know you've done the time. You've probably done a couple of hours of practice. You know you can do it. Just go out and do that time. I know it sounds silly, but no matter what Jared Filsell's done, that time might not be attainable. Just go out and do what you can do.
Well, if it wasn't obtainable before for Jared Filsell, he's just taken another 10th of a second out of that lap time. And the only driver to get down to the 36.9s, he is going to sit well and truly atop the pile. Checkered flags in the air as he crosses the start-finish line. That will be Brian Borg's final lap, and it will be an improvement. Bowler's on a fast lap here now at the moment. He will be in the first sector, but he's inside the top 10. Scott Gamble's just come across the start-finish line. He's inside the top 10, and that will be his qualifying done. New lap started, but it won't count. In terms of things, coming through the final couple of sectors, Jordan Ross is still on that lap, I think, at the moment. Just in behind him is Ken Latta, who sits just outside the 20. Seth Brown and Hayden Veld are the next couple drivers on the track. So what have these guys got left in the tank? Have they got pace? And there's more penalties coming into our way as well, which we'll talk about in just a few moments when we get those up on the screen for you. Because right now, qualifying's in the book. There was a big lock up in the background. Ross is done. Latta was the next car on track, locked up, heading on the run down to turn number 15. That lap will be done as well. And there's a number of drivers coming to the pit lane in 36 at the moment. Aaron Borg is a long, long way down the order. Luke Mitchinson to the line. Time in the books, a 38.2. Won't be an improvement for him. And now it'll be Aaron Borg's turn to get back to the start-finish line. Is he going to be able to improve upon his time? I believe he might have done so. And Bo Albert, you saw, will get to the pit lane. 4th in qualifying. He'll be happy with that. Andre Youssef in the final last gasp of the section to the line. Not going to happen. Matt Bowler's in that final sector as well. He's also going to abort. Final pit lane entry practice potentially for a number of these drivers. You can see they're pushing the apron quite hard on the run down into pit lane. And the 951 will be Sean McNamara, I believe, as well. And I didn't see him looking all that flash. Was 9th place at the moment. So, yep, no, he is actually quite confident in terms of things. A lot of drivers bailing out of their final qualifying laps there as well. Some mistakes right through the session. Teo Sorono for the Altus Australia squad as well on the run of the final sector. I think that's just about going to do it from qualifying here. And news being, new sponsor on the board. It's a news sponsor. And for Jared Filsell, he'll be making the Speed Cafe Lobs Esports teams happy there, Sandman.
Mate, pretty impressive time. I guess it's what we expect from Jared. You know, he's a great driver, and he put that time down. The only one in to be in the 36ers, but look at that margin, just over 4 tenths. Like, that's pretty impressive. So, yeah, the margin between him and Jake, at the end of the day, Jake would be happy to be sharing the front row with him.
Well, that's the margin up on the screen there. Jake, you had something to say on that one?
Oh, I just was going to say that I think that's got to hurt. I think to go 4 tenths faster than anybody is awesome for Jared, and that's going to be mega for his confidence, especially at a track that's relatively new for everybody. But for everyone else, what do you do with that? You know, do you try and even race this guy or just race for second?
Well, at the moment, we're going to have a quick chat to the driver that's sitting on pole position, Jared Filsell, qualifying in the books. Last week, it was off the other side of the front row. Tonight, it's going to be from that first position. 4 tenths of a second, mate. You were looking quite comfortable and confident out there in qualifying.
Yeah, thank you. It was critical to just get a banker straight up. I would have been bitterly disappointed if I didn't do a 36 that session, to be honest. I was threatening. It's good to get it on the last lap there. Still a little bit of time in it, to be honest, but happy I ticked off that little personal goal of my own. Yeah.
Mate, in terms of things, lots of confidence coming into this week. You talked about the new sponsor last time out, and that has all been signed, sealed, and confirmed. It's on the car here tonight. And Speed Cafe, happy with the partnership, and talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to get such a big sponsor. I can't wait to work with him for the foreseeable future. I think the car looks great. Personal preference is the green-eyed monster. Luke doesn't agree with that, but no, I'll take it. It's definitely a great-looking race car, that's for sure.
Mate, one more quick question before we get into it. 36.9, obviously quite quick in terms of qualifying trim. How's the race trim on the car?
Probably a second off that, to be fair. I reckon that's generally my trend at the moment.
No worries, brother. We'll let you get settled in, and good luck from the front row tonight.
Thank you.
Sandman, I believe you got our second place finisher from qualifying standing by. It'll be Jake Maloney. Let's starts off the outside.
Jake, congratulations. Sharing the front row with Jared. Does the time freak you out a little bit? I think it's surprised it to be 4/10 quicker.
No, not really, to be fair. I probably didn't do a very good lap, but yeah, no, it's not that surprising that Jared's got that pace.
How was your preparations coming into this round? Obviously, it's a new track for the series, but the V8s haven't had much laps around here. How did you go about prep getting ready for tonight?
Yeah, reasonably good. Started the other night and didn't think I'd like driving this track, but I'm actually finding it quite fun and pretty decent in the V8.
And race setup, obviously, that's what we're thinking about now. That one lap pace for qualifying, that's in the history books now. But it's all about just peeling off this race and getting settled. Is there any concerns? I think sometimes we all start thinking about the hairpin at the start of this race and how wild it can get. Obviously, you want to get a great start and try to get away from that carnage, if there is that, as quick as you can.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be too much carnage at this end of the field, with everyone just trying to get points to get through. But yeah, we'll see how the race goes. Haven't done more than 5 laps in a row, so we'll see what happens.
All right, that was going to be my next question, mate. If it's only been about for sort of 5 laps, does it give you an indication that the car's sort of going to behave itself, or it is that mystery of the unknown?
Yeah, no, not sure at all, really, to be fair. Yeah, no, just see how it goes.
All right, well, all the best, mate. Good luck for the race. Get a clean start, and yeah, hopefully we're talking to you at the end of the night.
Yes, sir, man.
There you go, Scotty. We're going to have a little wander further down through the grid. Who have you got there with you now?
Yep. Next driver that we'll be chatting to is the driver starting out of P number 14 at this point in time. Driver the 28, Richard Hampstead. Now, Richard, obviously we've talked at length already about everything that went on in round number 1 with the penalty late on. How's the confidence levels coming in this week? Is there any adjustments in terms of how you approach the race?
The confidence levels are not too bad, really. Pace is a lot better than what qualifying showed. Just basically bombed every lap in that session, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, we'll just try to focus on moving forward and see how many places we can move up the field.
In terms of things, if you're targeting obviously getting back into the series, is it top 10? I'm sort of going to push myself a little bit, make sure I finish inside that top 10, or is the first focus get to half race distance, then we'll sort of decide what we've really got to push for?
I'd say first focus is the first lap, moving through that cleanly and hopefully trying to pick up a few positions, seeing where we kind of settle down after that and working on the strategy from there.
Mate, in terms of things, do you think this is going to be a good round for you? Is this sort of a marker, you know, I'm back, this is where I'm feeling good, this is where I'm comfortable, I know that I'll qualify in based upon where I finish tonight, or is this just more of one of those tracks you go, this is sort of one we'll throw away?
No, honestly, my pace really isn't too bad. Bombed every lap in that session. We'll see, you know, hopefully we can move a bit further forward in the race, but not feeling too bad, really.
Mate, best of luck here tonight, and hopefully the pit lane exit, you don't punch that limiter too soon this time.
Yeah, thanks, fingers crossed.
Best of luck, brother. And finally, our final driver we'll interview as part of our grid walks, the driver starting at a 28 spot, Sandman standing by with Anthony Visma.
Anthony, it's obviously everyone's ideal position to be on the front row. You're starting a little bit further back here, 28. How was qualifying for you?
Oh, look, it's a struggle, you know. Everyone's fast in this field, so just to get where I am, I'm pretty happy. But just the plan is to have a clean race, stay out of the way of everyone, and learn as much as I can.
I love that you said that you're just happy to be on the grid, because actually I'm really jealous, mate. I know as much as I do enjoy being in the commentary box, I would much rather be on the racetrack, and it doesn't matter where you start. And it's like you said, there's a number of great names up and down this field. So just to be part of the grid is an effort in itself, mate. So how do you look at tonight to progress and make your way up the grid?
Oh, well, look, I'd love to say I had a problem with the car, but that's the best I got. So it just shows how fast all these guys are. But look, hopefully tonight just have a clean race, as I said, and just learn as much as I can and try and just improve a bit and keep going forward.
So the strategy, obviously, just to stay out of a bit of trouble, settle yourself in and pick them off one at a time. I reckon that's the way to go, mate. Don't be too worried about starting down the back there because you're on the grid. You've got pace in the car, so fingers crossed you can just start peeling them off. And hey, even if they start making mistakes in front of you, just grab them one at a time, mate. You'll be fine.
Oh, mate, that sounds like a good plan, but let's just see how it goes, eh?
Well, all the best for tonight, mate. Really good to see you on the grid, and stay out of trouble, and hopefully we're talking to you a little bit later on tonight.
No worries, thanks very much.
There you go, Scotty. That's the field. They're set. They're ready to go for this first time here around Magny-Cours. And, mate, there'd be some nervous drivers on this grid right now.
Yeah, one of them is not going to be Jared Philsell. You heard about the confidence, feeling good with the new livery, loves the new colour scheme, starts off with the front row, got that pole position. Jake Maloney will start alongside of him. Moving back to row number 2, we're going to be looking at Forza El Nabi and Bo Albert. Albert missed qualifying, didn't have a great performance out of round number 1, rose through the field. Forza El Nabi makes his big splash back in a V8 supercars. Off of row number 3, it's going to be Damien Johnson who will find a little bit of pace this time by. We'll see if he can lock that in for the series thus far. Jacob O'Reilly will be the first of a million cars off alongside of him. It'll be a big surge in confidence for O'Reilly. Jordan Ross and Matthew Bowler are going to be off of row number 4 for Synergy Sim Racing and Evolution Racing Team, the two big powerhouses. Line up side by side. Off of row number 5, it's going to be Sean McNamara and Scotty Gamble. We're going to round out your top 10 for the 9.5 Sim Sports and the WKMP Sim Sports. Both of these two big stalwarts of the VGA 8 Supercars community. The second 10, we're going to start off with Zach Rattray White, the youngster who's learning his way in terms of things. He's the second of the Vermilion Motorsports cars, off alongside of Andre Youssef in the first of the Altus Australia Esports cars. There are 10th and 11th. 12th and 13th is going to be Andre Youssef. Sorry, my apologies. Going to be Brady Baldwin and Richard Hampstead in 13th and 14th as they settle themselves down in. We talked to Richard Hampstead. Hopefully it's a consistent finish for this time. Teo Serrano and Seth Brown are going to make up an all Altus Esports Australia row number 8 in 15th and 16th. A little bit of confidence for those guys, and teamwork along side by side for lap number 1 makes things easier. Ian Ford in the next of the ERT cars, off alongside of Ryan Bilson. Ian Ford said that he had carbonara for dinner, and that gave him a ton of confidence. Luke Mitchinson and Kurt Stenberg in 19th to 20th. They're going to round out your top 20 there, Senman.
It's nice touch there, mate. So many drivers here keen if you get the race started, and of course, this is where the nerves start to creep in. They know they're close to the start time of this race, and this is where they start thinking about how they're going to start this race and trying to keep out of trouble.
Yeah, we're going to keep crawling our way through the field. Connor Nixon off alongside of Ken Latta in 21 and 22. Michael Talianchis, 23, alongside of Brian Borg in 24. 25th and 26th is Daniel Hall and Hayden Veld. Michael Whiting and Anthony Wiesma are going to make up row number 14 before we get to top 30 with Josh Thomas and Tyson Broad. Zachary Vlashbaum and Ty Delaney are 31st and 32nd. And then we'll roll on one row further back to Blake Delaney. Gets out qualified by his son, which will certainly be a point of debate, off alongside of Chad Lewis. And then it's back to Craig Schultz and Aaron Borg. We've got about 30 seconds before we'll be going into race. So we'll rush through the last couple guys. Will be Sebastian Van Del, Ben Christensen, all the way back in 37-38. And 39th and 40th with Dave Kirby and Brody Sentence before the remainder of the drivers in the session are your race control crew. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been round number 1 in the books. Round number 2, 202 kilometres, right on the verge of 203, 46 laps, 2 pit stops to complete. And as the lights are going to start to come on, this is the Logitech Pro Invitational. This is the qualifying series. Only 20 can make it out of the series. Who's it going to be as the res start to rise? The run down to turn number 1 from Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours. And we are going to have a green flag in the air. Run down at turn number 1. Phil Sell got a reasonable getaway off the front row, but now they'll all try and file their way down in. You can see them scrapping for space in background. Phil Sell gets the lead from Joe Maloney, and Nel Nabi slots into P number 3. It's going to be Bo Albert there in P number 4 as well. And everyone seems like they've got a reasonable getaway. Car cuts across the infield. It's going to be the 51 of Seth Brown, the driver out of Coffs Harbour. Well, he's used to the sand, he's used to the surf, but that's not the way he would have liked to find the sand on lap number 1.
Oh, the tricky bit for him too is that he was just struggling to get that car, and he just had to take it easy because on the grass, the last thing you want to do is just lose a bit of traction and come in front of this field. Look at them all barrel into the hairpin now, just trying to find a little bit of real estate. Nose to tail, they're trying their best not to lock up. Managed to get through there, most of them.
4 wide in the background, and I think that was one of the Vermilion Motorsports cars, and Visma who's just tagged, and there is going to be contact at the tail end of the field. Don't know who that was. I think it was Visma who didn't get a good getaway. It was. And it's going to be Zachary Flashbomb was the other car that didn't get quite a good getaway. So they're going to make contact on lap number 1. Guarantee the stewards will be talking about it. And Visma, we heard him, said, yep, I've got to focus on getting through lap number 1. Hasn't popped out the other side exactly where he wanted. Jordan Ross is the car we've got on screen at the moment. Just ahead of him, Jacob O'Reilly. Everyone's sort of settling themselves into a nice little bit of a rhythm. But have a look at the scrap in behind these guys. Matthew Bowler and Zach Rattray White. Rattray White is going to try and go down there, and Bowler got not a great getaway. Wondering whether or not there might have been a slowdown. Yeah, there was a slowdown penalty. He was clearing, and he's still trying to clear it. Tumbles through the field, pops back out in P number 13. But good thing is, no black flag on his side of the office.
Yeah, it's never good to get a slowdown penalty, but the worst time to get it is when the field's bunched up like this. You lose so many positions, but like you said, he didn't get a penalty. Now he can just push on.
Yeah, and trying to get that one cleared in a train of cars like that can sometimes lead to drama. There's more chaos at the back end of the field. Too wide through the chicane on lap number 1. It's chaos, and there's a car in the fence on the inside. It's one of the Delaney's. It's the elder Delaney. It's Blake Delaney who's tumbling down through the field and sets those rear tyres alight as he scraps to try and get that car back underneath him, facing the right way. And, well, that's one way that you'll be tumbling down the qualifying order. Well, that means for him, he's got to find some pace elsewhere, deep into the hairpin. It's all on here in lap number 2.
Geez, I was concerned there. I thought Alnabi was going to make contact with the back of Maloney there. You could see the ground that he was making up under brakes, and I was concerned that if he just went that little bit deeper and pinched, there's more contact there. Yeah, so making those advantages here in the hairpin. So I thought that was going to be ugly between Jake and Forzan, but they got away with it.
And I think it might have been Hayden Veld was actually the driver that was just on the radio about contact on lap number 2, and that was his green and black car. And now the 1-1, who was that? Was out around those? That wasn't Teo Sorono because he's in the Altus Esports car. It was Ian Ford that was tumbling through the order with the number of ERT cars backing in this field as well as they go side by side back up towards the front. Where do you look? It's now continuing on as Bowler got a second slowdown penalty.
Yeah, it looks that way, doesn't it? He's moved to the inside. He's trying to give up that real estate there. No, looks like... No, he might have got away with it. Maybe he just got a bit upset with the car. The car didn't behave its way locked and probably just lost a little bit of ground. But thankfully, he looks like he hasn't got another penalty.
Well, Seth Brown got a slowdown penalty on that lap for his troubles as he journeyed through the gravel on lap number 1. And David Kirby will be getting himself a drive-through penalty for failing to serve a slowdown penalty. Now Seth Brown's made contact, and I think it might have been Aaron Borg he made contact with. It was down the final sector. Bowler is still trying to trade paint, trying to settle himself down in. And have a look at this one. Aaron Borg for the TCR crew, trying to find his way in. Damage to the front end of that car, but he got contact. There's a big wiggle through the chicane. My word.
Yeah, it's obviously his night's gone from bad to worse, but that damage to the front, that won't be great for him. I think where he's positioned now, he's definitely been thinking about a safety car just to bunch this field up. It's a matter of when these guys get into a bit of a drama, they lose so much track position. So he'd be praying for a safety car.
And think about Seth Brown, where he qualified 16th inside that top 20, now sits 29th. And this replay is going to tell what happened on lap number 1. 4 wide there, a huge checkup. Everyone just trying to make the corner on lap number 1. And then out the other side, that was Netcode, I think, between the Vermilion car and Wiesma. And that was Zachary Flashbomb from the Vermilion Motorsports car.
The only thing that these... Sorry.
Go right ahead, Sam, man.
I was just going to say, I'd be thankful that there's a little bit of real estate there. You know, when these drivers get themselves into a bit of a pickle, thankfully there's no close walls they have to worry about. A big dive up there the inside. So that was what cost Borg there. So no doubt the stewards will be having a bit of a look at that. But yeah, a little bit of runoff around for this racetrack. So thankfully these guys have still got reasonably straight cars for the most of it.
And Seth Brown will probably be a driver we check in multiple times throughout the night as he tries to climb his way back through the field. Penalty, you get the feeling, might be on its way towards him. But how about this from Richard Hamstead? 14th on the grid, 9th. So inside the top 10. He said that was where he wanted to go. A little bit further forward if I possibly can. Didn't quite get the quali lap together. And the Trans-Tasman machine, well, you said it last time out. He was capable of good things there, Jake. And he's found a little bit of pace, got some overtakes done early.
Yeah, that's it. And Richard's one of the smartest racers I've just about ever seen. He's a really frustrating guy to try and get past because he'll brake as late as possible to make sure that you can't get an overlap. And that's also what makes him sort of a formidable offender as well, as he can sort of brake really late, keep the car in control, and get sort of safe and controlled moves done. But there are a few movers and shakers up and down the field. I think Kurt Stenberg, also another TTR teammate of his, up from 20th to 14th. He made a lot of moves last week as well, if I remember correctly, but now there's another car around.
Yeah, Ken Latter it was, and I've already heard him on the radio. He's already trying to get that one reported in. And now have a look at the battle. Well, that was actually Seth Brown and Christensen at the moment as they bang doors multiple times on the run down the chicane. This is nearly a one-groove section of the course. They managed to enter there too wide, but Christensen backs out of that one, and I think that might have been the best way to go for that one. And this feels like the replay coming the way of what happened to Ken Latter. And is that Ian Ford? That is Ian Ford.
Oh, getting through a little bit of... Oh, he got tagged from behind.
So it'll be someone who was in and around Ian Ford. It'll be Michael Taliancic, which was the next Altus car on the road. So that will be 100% the 777 of Michael Taliancic making contact there. Back to live pictures as well. Imagine trying to make your way through the chicane. We've talked a couple of times in previous series, Jake, about the different capacities of what the cars feel like to be up and behind. Getting through that chicane with no visibility points is really, really tricky in these cars.
Yeah, that's right. These big taxis, at least until we get the Gen 3 car here on iRacing, I think they're really hard to see around, especially when you've got chicanes like that where you've got to be so accurate. You've got to be sort of within half a metre to make that apex, and sometimes you're just guessing. And, when you're back in traffic, that's one of the things that makes it really difficult, because then you can't get drive, you can't get a run, and it makes it even harder to get by someone.
How good was the move that we saw in that replay as well? And it was Richard Hampstead again. It was Zachary Rattray White that it was making his way behind the Villian Motorsports machine. And that exudes confidence for Richard. Sandman, that looks like him back to his old self.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you can start just peeling them off one at a time, it looks like he's pretty happy with his car, and he's just starting to get comfortable, get in that zone. And then now that he's got himself a little bit of clear air, he can sort of do a bit of head down, bum up now, and just sort of concentrate on who's in front of him. So car looks good, and he's driving it really well.
And Forza El Nami in the 097 as well, tucked up in behind Jake Maloney at the moment. In the meantime, Phil Sells just skipped away whilst we've not been paying much attention to that. 2.1 seconds leads the race at the moment. And don't forget, El Nabi's still got that 10-second penalty hanging over his head from qualifying. So he will be hoping to get to this first pit stop window. In terms of things here tonight, Jake, we're doing some numbers with the guys in terms of fuel. What's the fuel range we're sort of looking for?
I think we're similar starting fuel and similar race distance to what we dealt with last week. So we're obviously required to do 2 compulsory pit stops as per the rules, and I think will be a similar kind of deal, sort of a splash and tyres at each stop. I think maybe here you want to, you're going to get a huge gain from tyre life as well, though. So the undercut will be very, very powerful, but as will the overcut. So I think, short-term gain, long-term gain with the undercut might be worth it. We're seeing cars in the lane already. I think maybe that's a little bit early.
Well, I can tell you, Forza El Nami, just having a look at his lap times, he's already fallen off about 0.4 to about a half a second on the most recent lap by. So his pace already starting to fall off in that realm of things. 38.259 was his fastest lap of the race. 38.682 most recent lap. Bo Albert's sort of sitting there and thereabouts. He'll be happy with a little bit of fresh air on the nose end of that car as well. I get the feeling that Logitech replay screen is going to be popping up a whole bunch, because here comes a big old move sent down the inside. This will be Jacob O'Reilly, and he had to back out of that one. Not really an opportunity, and it'll take a skillful driver to get down the inside of Bo Albert any day of the week.
And that's going to get trickier as the race goes on too, because obviously your tyre life, that detects on how much grip that you're going to have into those braking zones. So you've got to be careful and have that mindset as the race goes on, that you're not going to have that grip that you used to having at the start. So it could get trickier as the race goes on for these guys.
Jake, talk to me about tyre management as well, because we've obviously talked about the chicanes and everything. They're a little bit trickier in terms of tyre wear, because it's not stop-start cornering. We've got the stop-start hairpin in the middle of the track. We've got another one down at 14. We've got the long flowing section. I get the feeling this is going to be a tyre burner tonight.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what makes the tyre advantage in the pits so strong here, is you've got, so many big braking zones where you can lock fronts, which obviously massively hurt the tyre's life. But you've also got off those big stops, really intense traction zones, which also burns rear tyres if you're not, got a good driving car underneath you. It's going to advantage people like Jared at the moment, who are actually just out there sort of chilling out, putting out great lap times, but not getting involved in all these fights. That's another thing, is you see these cars throughout the field, even the likes of Richard, who we see making another move now. Passing cars burns tyres, so that's something that's going to hurt him later into the race.
Well, unless you get down the inside, get the job done nice and cleanly, which he has managed to do, they'll all feed back in there. So Hampstead moves up, plus one more, up to P7. Damien Johnson was the car he just made a move on, and Johnson was trickling backwards towards these guys. Was up with the group ahead, but not anymore. And for Richard Hampstead, now plus 7. Sitting in a great little spot. Might be targeting 5th place at the end of this one with the pace that he's got on board at the moment. The 2 cars ahead. We're pulling some time out of him, so he will actually enjoy a little bit of clear air on the front nose of this car here, Sandman.
Yeah, and how good is it to see Hampstead going like this? You know, obviously he had his fair share of dramas throughout last season, but to find himself in the qualifying series, but here he is now, like he's just starting to carve them off, and here we are, lap 7 of 46. Like, obviously there's still a long way to go, but I think he'd be so comfortable at this stage, knowing that he's been able to make these moves on these drivers, and the pace that he's got in the car. I think now he just wants some consistency, and like you said, that clear air, he'll be relishing that, and it's just eyes forward.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, was it Brody Kostecki behind the wheel of that 28 car at Bathurst that, as it finished the race, parked on a fence at the exit of the dipper? Does that sound about right from Bathurst last year?
I think that might have been Michael Healy, not
Michael
Brody
Healy.
Kostecki.
My apologies.
Yeah, I think Brody was. I can't quite remember, but I think they were quite competitive last year. He would have been driving with Jared Filsell, if anything. But
yeah, I've got that one mixed up. I've got my wires crossed.
I think, unfortunately, they had the duty of missing out on Bathurst. I think it was Jared that got the penalty, possibly.
Yep.
But anyway,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it was Hampstead. The reason that he's in this series was that car actually ended up on a fence at Bathurst, and the race was over. And that was one of the reasons he's had to come back through the qualifying series. And we're talking last week, it's important. When you've had an off year, you've got to get that confidence level back, Jake. You've got to sort of put a stamp of authority down. It's more of for some drivers, it's a marker to themselves. So for some drivers, it's a marker to the competitions. Everyone takes a look at you and go, he's falling past, he's beyond his best, he's beyond the curve. Richard Hampstead, I don't think anyone's saying that anymore.
Yeah, well, I think we spoke a lot about the man on screen at the moment, Kurt Stenberg, last week, about how he just got a new sim rig and how adjusting to that makes a big difference. Well, Richard, he was on a T300, I believe, up until about the last quarter of last year. So to be doing as well as he was on such old gear, not that the T300's bad, but he had it for about 10 years and he'd recently upgraded. I think once he starts to get used to that, that'll make a huge difference as well.
Yep, settling into the new sim rig, and for Kurt Stenberg, the focus will be on moving forwards, and already up inside that top 20, 14th. It was not a great round from Road Atlanta, but already starting to make inroads and starting to look like the driver of old for him. And how about the driver that's following him along as well, Sean McNamara? He'll be pleased with this performance from himself. Qualified 9th, so would have been happy with the outright pace. At the moment, struggling a little bit. Lap 1 didn't go his way, and as penalties start to come through, by the way, there'll be another driver that lap 1, lap 2 didn't go his way, was Hayden Veld, caught up in 2 separate incidents, which the drivers that obviously the incident was made with have both received penalties for contact with Hayden Veld, so he'll be keen to try and forget about that, get the head down. And, well, Hampstead's still trying to make some ground here as things settle in. Sorry, my apologies, that's Jake Maloney on screen at the moment with Forznell Narby in behind him.
Yeah, he had a bit of a dive here at the hairpin, tried to make a move up the inside, and I think it was just a little bit of a under-over cut, and they swapped back to 2 and 3. But definitely having a go, and obviously it's playing on his mind too. That don't forget he's got that 10-second penalty that he has to serve too. So, does he want to start thinking about getting past Jake and trying to make as much distance as he can on him? But he doesn't want to be held up. But it would be tricky to have that playing on his mind.
Well, something to think about. 10 seconds if you add it to him right now, and nothing else, and not taking anything more into the equation, puts him down in between Matthew Bowler and Riley Bilson in 13th, what would become, 12th spot at the moment. So that's 9 spots that he drop back. The longer this goes on, though, the more and more chance he's got to move forward. And I tell you what, there's a number of cars right around that 10-second margin right where he is, and that's Seth Brown still crawling around. So something further going on there for Seth Brown. No, he's up to... penalty just came in for him, so that was the contact that we saw with Aaron Borg.
Yeah, if you're going to get a penalty this early on, whether it's a driving penalty, these guys would want to try and serve it, I guess, as quick as they can, and they'd be hoping on that safety car. But it's a different story, I guess, before that. He wants this to go long, just so the field stretches out a little bit and he doesn't lose too much position. So obviously he'll lose time, but he doesn't want to lose too many positions. So he'd be hoping that just stretches out for a little bit longer for himself.
There's a number of drivers sort of in and around the mix. Matthew Bowler, remember all that drama on lap number 1 for him is just at the back end of this shot in the number 12 car. And have a look at this trainer cars are just sort of sticking with each other because all of a sudden starting to make some time. I mean, Hampstead's making time here, starting to try and eke out at the front end of this pack. It's 2.5 seconds up the road to the next car, which will be Jacob O'Reilly in the 222 for Vermilion Simsport. So if he can start to make some inroads, didn't make it in the first sector, might make some time back in this middle sector. Indeed, he does. He takes a significant chunk out of the cars ahead in the middle sector. So it looks strong in and around the slow corners for the driver of the 28. Moving forwards, and another driver just in the background sitting inside the top 10, 543, Scott Gamble. He'll be happy with this. Didn't have the cleanest round out from Road Atlanta. Opportunity to stick some really healthy points on the board. Spoke to him prior to tonight's racing action as well, by the way, and he said, look, just looking for a good result. Felt confident, did some racing last night. Luke Mitchinson serving a slowdown penalty on screen at the moment. But yeah, he felt Go ahead.
Other dramas, maybe. He seems to be a long way off the racetrack. He seems to be giving up too much time if it's a slowdown penalty. I wonder if he's got other dramas going on there.
Steering dramas, hardware dramas, maybe?
He's still got
sorted
power.
itself now.
Yeah.
Stuck in first gear. I can see he's not changing gear.
Oh, no.
Oh, now he's got it. He's pulled a gear and seems to be stuck again.
Just gives you vibes of...
it looks to me like he's stuck in first.
Well, we can see from the over his shoulder, you can see his dash. He is stuck in first gear. Yeah, you're right there, Jake. And then you said he got it out of first gear and then got going again. Oh, that's heartbreak, isn't it? And then again, that's what we talk about, that 20-cent part in our virtual world. He's in the pit lane, so hopefully they can get this sorted, whether it's a shifter issue or what the case may be. But that's, that's heartbreak.
Well, the problem for Luke Mitchinson as well is he was actually having a reasonable night at the office. He was inside the top 20 when that happened. He was 18th. So that would have been enough points to progress, and that's what he was chasing. So either way, that's happened. More drama going on at the moment as out pops the 111 car, trying to make a move down the inside is Teo Sorono, and this would have been on the 07 of Brady Baldwin. So did get that job done, but I can tell you Sorono is still right there and hanging around Brady Baldwin as well.
He's keen flashing his lights before. I thought there might have been a bit of contact between them, but it looked fairly clean. So not sure what the flashing lights, I'm pretty sure that was him just before.
Was that him saying maybe hurry up? I want a fuel save behind you. If you can pull me along, that'd be great.
It might be.
Communication tool, Jake Burton? Your favourite communication tool, the old light flash?
Or the bumper for Jake, wouldn't it be?
Oh, well, if you're in the way, you need to get out of the way. Whether you get yourself out of the way or I move you is a different question. But
the flash of lights can mean so many things as well. It can mean I'm upset with you, that was a good move, or celebrate the end. And Ken Latta is going to be a retirement early on, and this might be the reason for that. Heavy damage. Front, side, and rear. Bonnet missing, and he probably feels quite aggrieved with that one. And car is bent all out of shape, and night done from Magny-Cours.
Yeah, the hairpin too. We touched on how tricky the hairpin was going to be. So we've seen it's shown its fair bit of drama so far, but unfortunate that that's cost him for the rest of the night. So yeah, a bit of bad luck there.
Well, unfortunate for Kenny Latta. Settles down on in. And Seth Brown's got another penalty just come his way as well. So the first penalty that we're talking about wasn't actually a penalty with Aaron Bull. It was one with Brody Sentence. It was earlier on in the race. So Seth Brown's got 2 penalties. We hadn't seen the first one. It was from lap number 1 as well. It was the last corner on lap number 1.
And how's the battle for second now?
Yeah, it's starting to hold up, and Forza Del Nabi's gone through. Found a little bit of pace. Now he'll lead these guys as they come through the final corner, and here comes Bo Albert as well. So as these guys ahead of him start to squabble, 6 seconds down the road is Jared Philsell now, so it's turned from 0.4 of a second in qualifying to into the sunset in terms of the race pace at the moment. And,
yeah, that's...
Go ahead.
Scotty. Yeah, that's just part and parcel. And Forzan and Jake just having their own little battle. They slow each other a little bit up. You know, Jared's got that fresh air. There's no doubt about Jared's speed, but he'd be licking his lips when he knows that these two are sort of battling it out behind him, because they just start slowly tripping over each other and they give away that time. But like you said, nearly 6.4 seconds up the road. Jared's doing it very easy at this stage.
Well, we saw the undercut happen last week for the driver of the 06, Bo Albert, at the tail end of this chain. That's where he made his spots, qualified deep in the field, 28th. And managed to finish well inside the top 10, top 20, up and around that 15th sort of spot for Bo Albert. Long way forward this week. Well, Jake, is he the one that's going to pull the undercut here? Given this time around, there's a lot more traffic where he's going to come out of that lane.
I'm not sure if the undercut's the go for Bo. He's actually had some really good pace on older tyres compared to the two in front of him. I think maybe you can probably rely on that being consistent over the race. I think maybe now you go long. You got track in front of you. You got, if you pit early, you got risk of being thrown into traffic. I reckon if you're Bo, you go long, and then maybe try have a crack at these guys with a 5 or 10 lap tyre advantage later in the race because you've got that longevity compared to those guys.
Well, for the moment, he's going to sit down and watch. Another penalty coming through. Taliancic on contact on Ken Ladder on lap number 4. Stewards have been busy tonight. It was very, very clean from Road Atlanta. Not so anymore, and that was wide, very, very wide, coming onto the start-finish straight. The Forsnell Nabi hasn't hampered the pace. Maloney's not quite close enough to make any advantage of that one. But starting to slip back towards Bo Albert, and at this point in time, not making any time. Phil Sell pulls another 0.3 of a second out of these guys as well. He's gone. Forget it. It's now a race on for who's going to finish second, and there's going to be a race on for who finishes inside the top 10 as well. Because have a look at Hampstead, and the guy's still sticking with him down in 7th spot.
Yeah, and that's what touches on what Jake was saying in regards to Bo. Like, he can just sort of sit there and look after his equipment. He doesn't have to worry about, battling these two in front because he knows the leader's gone. That's unrealistic at this stage that he's going to close that gap down to 7 seconds. So what he wants to do is just look after his car. And I reckon Jake touching on it is him going a little bit longer. And if he looks after these tyres, that could benefit him nicely.
Might go for the overcut. How about these guys wrapped in this battle pack? There might be some wiggle room for where these guys can get into the lane down here. Pack covers from the front end of it. The 111 machine of Toe Sorono. Right through Brady Baldwin, Ian Ford, Josh Thomas and Connor Nixon. The last car in this train hanging just off the back of it is Michael Whiting in 21st. So 16th through to 20th is the cars that you saw on that picture-in-a-picture. Now becomes our main shot as well because Brady Baldwin in a little bit of trouble here. And I get the feeling Ian Ford's Carbonara might be turning into carving up the racetrack in a few minutes, and it might be Braden Baldwin that's his target.
I do love at this point of the race where drivers start thinking about, obviously there's those 2 stops that they've got to start thinking about. You don't want to peak too early because it can sort of work against you. But when they start to feel like they're in a bit of a train here and their tyre advantage is starting to go, as we look at Richard Hampstead, he's decided to dive into pit lane. He'll go on for some new tyres and then we'll see some pace. But it is at that point of the racetrack or the race, I should say, where they all start thinking about where this strategy will start to play out for them.
Yeah, well, we're watching that battle pack for 16th. None of them pit that time by. It was interesting to see Richard Hampstead was the driver that elected to pit, was at the lead of the battle pack that he was in and around. I'll tell you what, he's going to rejoin the track with a little bit of clear air. So that's worked out just about perfectly there for Richard Hampstead. Was probably waiting to clear a number of things. In they all start to come, though. Hayden Veld, Daniel Hall, Craig Schultz, Aaron Borg. So lap 14 becomes pit lane lap for a bulk of the field, just shy of the 1/3 race distance in terms of things. Lap 15, we're going to start seeing pit stops aplenty as probably the bulk of the field comes in. We'll keep half an eye on our race leader. Phil Sell might run long here, though. Why risk it? Well, the other option might be if a safety car were to happen on that first lap out, that is the bigger risk for Phil Sell.
What do you think, Jake, as far as the pit stop? He's obviously, you think he may have hurt his tyres a little bit, or he just wants to get that one pit stop out of the way? Were you surprised that he pitted as early as he has for Hampstead?
Oh, not really. I think, as I say, when you're passing so many cars, you start to burn stuff up. And I also think maybe an interesting strat that you can do is maybe take a little bit more fuel in the first stop and then use the benefit of the undercut to kind of counteract that. Richard's probably in a part of the field at the moment where he's got a little bit more pace than where his track position shows. He can probably take it to the next couple cars, so probably afford to take a risk knowing that you're not really going to get overcut by cars behind you. At the end of the day, I think he's just running through the motions and found a clear bit of track.
Well, everyone's starting to come down the lane. Zach Rattray-White's in, Stenberg, Sorono, Nixon's in as well. So that's 2 cars out of that battle pack for 16th. Here comes Hampstead. This will be the car to watch in terms of things, because remember, Rattray-White was one of the cars that was in the battle pack that was just in behind him. We'll see where Rattray-White comes out in terms of things. We'll keep half an eye on him. Comes the pit lane exit at this point in time. Hampstead's gone through. Tyson Broad was the car in the middle of them. Hasn't pit thus far through the race. Stenberg's going to come out just in behind them. Ben Christensen as well is going to run along in this first stint of the race. But pit lane activity starting to really work its way up. Still seeing not a huge chunk of the field pit thus far. They're going to get that long stint out on the first stint. Will create a little bit of a hole in the fuel tank as well. Difference in terms of car behaviour this week. Does that fuel impact it with the kind of the dynamic track, the dynamic sort of corners there, Jake? Is there as much sort of impact in terms of that fuel weight over the car balance?
Oh, definitely. You got so many of those big braking zones, like that hairpin we see down at turn 5 there. You're going from 6th gear all the way to 1st. That's probably one of the sort of longest braking zones you deal with. So if you're carrying 60 litres or 60 kilos less fuel than somebody else, it makes a big difference. So you want to try and keep it relatively light. Probably not going to make a huge difference in a 2-stop race like this, but yeah, generally you still want to keep it pretty light, especially at a track with heaps of braking and traction zones.
Well, front four are going to continue on, not take a pit stop, and I think that was Jordan Ross coming through the back end of the shot as well. Jacob O'Reilly, both of those, so front 6 don't come in. Damien Johnson and Scott Gamble out of that battle pack that we're seeing out of Richard Hampstead as well. Both of them come in at the conclusion of lap number 16, so the front half of the field running long early on. 18th, 19th and 20th is Thomas, Nixon, Whiting at this point in time. Sorry, Nixon and Whiting were the two cars I was sort of trying to keep half an eye on. Toast Sarono a little bit earlier. Brian Borg was one of the guys who picked very, very early on at conclusion of lap number 9. Has found his way into 23rd at the moment, but it'll be ahead of Connor Nixon, so it'll be in and around sort of that 16th to 17th mark. So he's found some time. Sarono on screen at the moment, battling away with teammate Seth Brown, who's had a disastrous night at the office in terms of things thus far. So now we settle down and in, and there is a very big mix of strategy here, which I really like to see, Sam, man.
Absolutely, and that sort of, as a driver too, you start to lick your lips when you're down throughout the field. You know, you love it when people start to mix it up, whether they take a risk and change that pit strategy. Sometimes that can work into your advantage, and I think Hampstead would be happy too that, you know, obviously we spoke about he was sort of one of the first majors to take a pit stop up the front, and now when he starts seeing everyone else making those stops, I think that's when he starts to smile underneath that helmet.
Well, in terms of things, Damien Johnson was the car that was right behind him. He's put 5.5 seconds over him as we go to the True Force replay yet again, and that's Borg down the inside, makes contact with Dave Kirby, but gets the job done, and that's what he was looking for out of that one, starting to move his way back through the field. But yeah, Richard Hampstead made about 5.5 to 6 seconds out of that pit stop. Bo Albert's going to be in. He's the first of that lead group too.
Yeah, he surprised us a little bit, didn't he, Jake? Like, we kind of expected that he might go long, but he's decided that he'll fire in the pit lane. And you imagine now, if these teams, like Forzan and Jake, don't pit on this next lap, he may get the jump on him.
Yeah, that's true, but you know, he has actually gone a little bit long. I'm actually surprised. Generally, the whole race seems to be staying out quite a bit longer than I thought they would. At the end of the day, it's a 46-lap race, so the even point's 15, so we're a couple laps beyond that now. I don't think you'd want to go too long, because then you could start to lose spots. I reckon the undercut's worth about a second a lap around here, so you don't want to give up too much.
Now, if you're on the TTR radio, sorry to Scott you off there, Scott, but would you be bringing Maloney in for this lap?
Oh, I think Maloney knows that Forzan is probably going to be out of the picture. So he's really racing Bo because of the penalty that Forzan's got. So you can afford to sort of go a lap or two longer, and that's really all that's involved in that battle. Plus, Maloney had a good result last week. He can take a little bit of risk this week, knowing he's still probably going to finish in the top 5.
Well, I was just going to say as well, yeah, that penalty come in the way of Forzan El Nabi, and Stewart's been notified to be coming to the lane this lap to serve that penalty. So will be on his way in as Forzan El Nabi comes down to the final corners. Now we'll keep an eye on Bo Albert. How much fuel did all the drivers take? Who's been looking to stop long? And Jake Maloney says, well, if he's going to undercut, all right, no worries. I'm going to go with the overcut. And on the most recent time by, Forzan El Nabi had lost about 8 to 9 tenths of a second. About Jake Maloney, compared to his peak lap time, was a 38.217. Most recent time by 39.738 was his last time by. So 1.5 seconds. So that's 2.5. No, it is my apologies. 1.5 seconds off the pace. He was only 7 tenths off on that previous time by 38.9. So something happened. 8 tenths of a second on that lap was lost. So time's starting to tick away from Jake Maloney. And we'll get a little bit of a resumption of serve as a number of drivers now in. Forznell Nabi's got that long stop. He's got that one down and away. Josh Thomas is in and around there. How deep is he going to drop through the field will be a big, big question mark. And does he have the pace to make his way back through? Or does he just settle a little bit from Forznell Nabi's shoes?
Oh, look how close was that on pit exit. There you go. You're just talking to that rejoin where the pit lane finishes and then you've got the field coming out there. But thankfully he's got a bit of fresh tyres. Hopefully he can just start to pull away. A little bit cold though, so he's going to go a little bit defensive, probably into the hairpin. But man, that was close on exit.
Now, Andre Yusuf's the driver that's in and behind him. Scott Gamble will be the driver that's up the road from him at this point in time. And have a look at them as they all start to feed down on and in. And Rattray White sits in 11th. Stenberg, Bowler are the 5 drivers that are sort of in that battle bubble. And tell you what, just off the back of them, Riley Bilson, Sean McNamara as well. This will probably be the replay of the pit lane exit. This is what it looked like for Andre Yusuf coming around to find a wild Forznell Nabi on his outside at turn number 2.
Oh, I can assure you it's a lot freakier. Oh, wow. It's a lot freakier when it's happening in real time. Like, we knew the outcome, but you still hold your breath there. Man, that was really close.
Got a ton of understeer as he went in there too. As was trying to mate the spot because he knew as soon as he lost that spot, it was gone. Maloney's now in. And Phil Cell continues, which is interesting because if a safety car would have happened this lap, Jared Philsell would be one of the only drivers in the field that hasn't pit. Everyone else has got a compulsory pit stop out of the way. They can pit for their second, whereas Phil Cell can't. That'll be a huge risk. We talked about how important it was to manage last week, Jake. You got to get the feeling he'll be in this lap.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Jared's got a fair bit of confidence at the moment, but I wonder if maybe he's just not thinking about the fact that the safety car could kill him like that. That is a risk, definitely, because at the moment, as you say, if a safety car comes, Jake Maloney takes the lead, and Jared drops, probably halfway down the field when he takes his second stop. So definitely a lot of risk in it, but he's in control at the moment. I'm guessing we'll probably see him in the next lap or two.
Yep, Bo Albert's now inherited second place of this race, and that means that Jake Maloney's got 1.5 seconds to track him down. That's actually not too bad, given that there was a 2-lap difference in terms of pit stops, 0.7 of a second per lap in terms of advantage, plus the overtake. So probably in the realm of 2 seconds, a second a lap, about what we were talking about in terms of things. So he's popped out. How about this from Richard Hampstead, though? Up to 4 spot.
Yeah.
Now, 14th to 4th, 10 spots gained, Sandman. Great night at the office when you consider that.
You'd be pretty happy with that, wouldn't you? At the end of the day, here we are. Here's Jared just in the lane. We spoke about the amount of lead that Jared's got at the moment. He doesn't have to worry about, how much longer he comes in, but we put that to bed now as far as getting caught out with a safety car. But well done, Richard Hampstead. He's been pretty smooth at the moment. He's got a little bit of pressure at this stage, but that just might be the tyre difference. He was up there with one of the first drivers to make that pit stop, but here they go at the end of the year. That's Jordan Ross, is it?
Yeah, Jordan's just come out of pit lane though, so Richard's maybe 4 or 5 laps into his stint, whereas Jordan's on brand new, so he's probably going to lose that spot anyway. But Richard will now try to be hanging on to him.
We'll be hanging on to the rear bumper, and the fuel save games will start to play a little bit of a part. Tyre save as well. Look at the different lines as they get down through turn number 2. It's the longer, flowing, sweeping style corners that tend to create that, and still some wiggle as he gets back to the power out the other side, the run down the back straight. Probably worthwhile going for a little bit of a ride throughout the lap. We might try and get some wheel work in the shot for you as Richard Hampstead gets a little bit of a draft and run down to the Adelaide hairpin. And like you said, extremely brave on the brakes, the driver of the 28. Kinks it all the way back to the right, up through the gears. And then they call this, I believe, the Nürburgring chicane through turn 7 and 8. To the right, lots of curb all the way up over on the right. Jake, how about you talk us through the rest of this lap? Because there's curb, there's a lot of detail and elements for all these drivers that we're probably missing here.
This corner here was the one that I was talking about earlier in the broadcast. That one there coming off that chicane into that left-hander is so tricky to get right. It's so easy to punch a front left. But the rest of the lap is technical. This is the one where it's really tricky to sight that second apex. So when you're right behind a car like Richard is, it's quite hard to see. And then you've got this sort of tighter than you think 90-degree right that then has a curved traction zone. And this straight's quite long, so getting the power down, which Richard actually didn't manage all too well then, is really, really key. And then we're into the last couple of corners. And again, we've got another tight sort of acute angled corner with a really tricky traction zone, but not as critical here because then we're into that final chicane where it's all a matter of just sort of getting it over those curbs and off straight. So bearing in mind that Richard's got sort of 5 laps older tyres, he's not doing too badly at the moment.
Yep, hanging with Jake Maloney on the run down through turn 1, turn 2, and turn 3. And then this little battle pack in behind starting to really spice up as well. So Hampstead was the earliest of the pitters in terms of the top 5 at the end of lap number 14. In terms of these next few drivers, O'Reilly pit at the end of lap 18, Johnson 16, Gamble 16, and Elnabi 18. Elnabi's taken, obviously, that penalty, so now he's going to start the range up on the rear bumper of Scott Gamble. And wonder how long this one will take. Gamble just gets right out of the way. Not interested in fighting it. Knows that one's not going to take too long for that move to pull off. And like I said to him earlier on tonight, it's about getting points inside the top 20. And he's looking to secure them rather than take some risks. And that was risk aversion right there.
Yeah, that was really smart heads-up driving. There's no point battling. You know, there's so many drivers that I see that battle and fight people that sort of are a little bit faster than them. There's no gain there. So the smartest thing you can do is just move out of the way. But things pressuring up a little bit now. You can see that Jake's now got his speed. He's chasing to the back now, back of Bo. Sort of his tyres have come up to temperature. He's closed that margin now. So you would imagine the pace that Jake's got at this stage, you think he'll probably dispose of Bo fairly quickly and hopefully start to pull away.
Well, you hope so, because all of a sudden you don't do that. Bo Albert's got some real good speed late on, so he might just get the elbows out just a little bit, cover him. He won't defend like his life depends upon it at the moment, because absolutely there's no gain in that one. As Jared Filsell just goes and casually sets the fastest lap of the race and continues to punch out 9.5 seconds in the lead. Hoping to be 10 by the end of this lap will probably be his target. In terms of things, though, for Bo Albert, decision-making, Jake, you'd say he's strong late on in the tyres, and that means you've got to be a little bit more defensive early when you're in that weaker phase of the tyre.
Yeah, that's right. I think Bo's doing all right at the moment. As we saw in the last stint, Bo's tyre life's pretty good. So I think the key to him at the moment is just going to be not let Maloney get in his head. Just sort of run his line. Don't overdrive the car to try and stay in front of him. If Maloney wants to try and pass him, go for it. Let's focus on the next pit stop. Let's focus on using that tyre advantage that he seemed to have in the first stint, and see if he can get at him in the back half of the stint.
Tell you what, though, for Jake Maloney, he knows that he's got an advantage here, and he's trying to put some rubber down to the track and trying to make some sort of an advantage as they come down through the middle of the track, turn 9, and the corner that doubles back. It's about getting down to the apex. He's closing. Might be next time by when they get down to the Adelaide hairpin. Might be a little bit earlier than that, because we've still got the hairpin down at turn 14. It'll take some good drive through the middle of the lap as well. And he's closing as Maloney. Might be only a matter of time. But the battle for P2 starting to spice up. Closes yet again. Still not quite far enough up. Whoa. But you can tell he's got supreme grip, and you can tell he wants to be aggressive over those curbs. There's pace in that 29 there, Sandman.
Yeah, definitely. And he's got that tyre grip too. You can see just that turn in that he's got. So, yeah, car looks very good, but he doesn't need to sort of go too hard and tear up what he's got, because at the end of the day, there's not a lot of pressure back there to lose the top 3 position between those two. There's a decent margin. So at the end of the day, he just needs to think about what he's got underneath him, not take too many risks, because we're still talking about one more pit stop too as well. So yes, he's got good pace, but doesn't want to do anything silly.
Battle pack that's in and around that 10th spot as well, starting to heat up. We might just get you some live points. We'll get the top 10 underway in terms of where we sit currently. This is with everyone on track as they currently stand. Phil Sell leads the way, finished second in round number 1, is leading the way in round number 2. Jake Maloney sits in P2 on the points. Jordan Ross, Forza El Nabi, and Bo Albert, after a little bit of a drama-filled round number 1, made hay while the sun shone. And have a look at Zach Rattray White sneaking inside the top 10. Sean McNamara, average night at the office, sits inside of the top 10. That's all it takes to qualify. But Toa Sorono's in there as well. That's your top 10 as it currently stands. Then becomes the interesting battle, and it's the battle for the bubble. And have a look at Hayden Veld there, sits in 22nd at the moment. So in terms of things, Connor Nixon is your driver that sits on the bubble at the moment. 4 points above Riley Bilson and 12 points behind Brian Borg. Richard Hampstead makes his way in with such a strong finish here tonight, but Griffin Gardner sits in 25th, and that's 1 round worth of points. No Griffin Gardner in attendance here tonight, so that will be a threat. For me, you'd have to be sitting 19th or better, because Griffin Gardner is going to put points in the bank in the next couple of rounds as well. So that's the battle as it currently stands. For those guys sitting on the Arda, they've got some work to do.
Absolutely. As a driver, Jake, how much does that play on your mind? Because obviously this is only a short series. It's a qualifying series to make the championship for the year. But do you start thinking about points? Obviously, you've got to make every race count. But do you start to stress too much about points at this stage?
I think so. I think it can be really easy, especially if you're one of these bubble drivers, to sort of think, oh, you know, I'm 21st. I need to be in the top 20. At the end of the day, it's best to just take it race by race. Guys like Jared Filsell aren't going to be thinking about that. You know, he knows he's going to get in. He's already thinking about practicing for round 1 of the actual series. But yeah, it's just a matter of sort of calming your head, taking it by race, and trying to get as many points as you can.
And then, endurance season we're going to talk about later on in the year, but, well, qualifying series, it's nearly the perfect proving ground. If somebody's thinking about sticking their hands up and saying, hey, I'd like to learn from the big boys, maybe I'm not quite there out my own at the moment, but I'm looking for a drive, I'm looking for things. Is there anyone so far that's impressed you enough to say, hey, we've got our eyes on this guy for an endurance drive?
Oh, well, you'd sort of have to see who makes it first. Obviously, right now, of everyone in the quali series, I'd quite like to have Jared, but I think it's pretty fair to say that he's going to qualify. So you're spot on, though. Even us at TTR, we sort of know that, you know, it's a really good opportunity for guys like Borgie and you know, Heimgartner, who unfortunately didn't make it this week, but, you know, a good opportunity for them to get some laps under their belt, and if they qualify, awesome. If they don't, they're going to be first in line to get a co-drive come Bathurst time.
So there's a couple of drivers that are lurking right around that bubble that interest me. Connor Nixon, we talked about his drive from the rear end of the field last week. Well, he might point his way in, which means sort of half a line through there. And I was going to pitch towards you, Zach Rattray White, but at the moment he's sitting on the inside. So there's another driver that sort of gets a line pushed through. Tyson Broad, Craig Schultz, Ben Christensen. You know, a number of drivers have put in okay drives. Anthony Visma's another one. You know, you sort of go, are they good enough? We know that they can qualify him, but they certainly can't race their way. And are you looking at how they drive the race along as who they're affiliated with? You know, what sort of factors go into those sorts of debates?
Oh, I think ultimately, you know, people are going to drive for their own teams. You know, we've got drivers in TTR who we're going to prioritise over others, and I imagine all these people have teammates as well. But, you know, inquire within, contact Madison Down on Facebook, and maybe we'll make something happen.
Well, I suppose some drivers you can coach as well. There'll be drivers that'll be sitting in and around that mark that you go, yeah, if that guy had a little bit of help, I think he'd probably kick over the line. Something to keep half an eye on, keep it in the back of your mind. For the viewers watching along at home, for the viewers that are watching along at home, is there anyone out there that has impressed you as a driver? I'd love to see a couple of votes. There's a couple of votes out there for Scott Gamble. It does get a fair bit of support. Connor Nixon was getting some support as well. And Luke Rosella's dropped in by the chat as well. Said upper lob. So obviously he's interested in watching some of the racing. So everyone's sort of enjoying this. You enjoying the off-season, Jake? A little bit of time away, a little bit of relaxation before you kick back into the full stretch of things?
Yeah, I think so. I miss racing. You know, much like what Sandman said earlier, watching these guys racing tonight, I kind of wish I was out there. So, you know, I'm pretty excited. I think, me personally, I'm unfortunately going to miss the first round of the series, but someone's just had a bit of a slide.
Was that McNamara? No, it wasn't. Riley Bilson in the 995 machine. As I believe that was Stenberg that now gets down the inside of him, and he picks up a spot as well. So, big old slide as he came through the Nürburgring chicane, settles it back on down. Race continues to settle on down. The drivers are sitting around that 20th part moment. Nixon's up into 19th. Brady Baldwin slipped back to 20th spot as it currently stands. And Kurt Stenberg is probably important that he makes a lot of hay while the sun shines. Jake Maloney's now pushed out about of a second margin. So those tyres starting to come into play for him a little bit, Sandman. But he'll be very, very cautious to look after them late on this stint. He won't want Bo coming back at him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the last thing you want to do, isn't it? When you start to get that margin and if you throw away little opportunities like that. So, yeah, he'd be just mindful of just hitting his marks, let these laps tick away and then start thinking about, obviously, that next stop. That's not any time soon just yet, but, you know, anything can happen with the introduction of a safety car or something like that. But all of these teams and drivers will be definitely on their toes, just seeing how the next few laps play out.
Weather's starting to tail off as well. Things are getting a fraction cooler, sort of hovering in and around at 23 degrees Celsius mark. Fraction below it, I believe, at the moment. It'll be in the 22 point somethings. It'll be point high, I can tell you that much. But in and around that 23 degree mark, hasn't hovered too much. And we saw Jordan Ross get aggressive with Richard Hampstead earlier on in the stint. We saw the reply just there a few moments ago from Richard Hampstead, back up into fourth position at the moment. Tyres starting to favour him. Fawzil Nabi's, by the way, is only about 3 seconds back up the road. He's starting to close in on Jacob O'Reilly. So I reckon within about the next 5 laps, he might be harassing the rear bumper of the Vermilion Motorsports 222 of Jacob O'Reilly, and he'll be happy with that. He's disappointed with himself for getting a penalty in qualifying, Sam, but the response has been good for Forzen. Sometimes it's good to test yourself, go backwards a little bit, put some pressure on yourself. How do I respond?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, you can't fight City Hall, so it is what it is. What he needs to do is exactly what he's doing right now, is just take it on the chin and now just start to pick them off one by one. He's at a point of the race now that he's got, you know, the tyres and the pace that he's got at the moment. He can actually be in a position now, as we see a car into the wall.
Oh, it's Rattray White! No! Oh,
You were just talking his stocks up.
I'm going to stop doing that.
You've given the commentators Curse a fair bit of damage to that Commodore as well too. So that is, we're going to see a bit of a replay now. What happened? Did he get some help? Oh,
a weird spot on the track to make the fence. That's
turn one.
Curious to see what's happened here.
He hasn't gone straight. He's locked a tyre. That's straight up.
That's a failure.
That's a failure.
Yeah.
Hardware failure for sure, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no way you make that mistake on your own. That's
this is unreal. Well, it's amazing that we've normally we'll talk about the occasional hardware failure every now and then, but to have a couple of people having PC issues in the same night.
Oh, his wheel switched off. His wheel switched off. Watch this.
Yeah, watch his
He goes to tip in the corner, and the wheel locks.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very on iRacing quite often when you have a wheel disconnect or a pedal disconnect, it sets all three pedals to 50% or 100%. And you saw the way that car locked up but was still accelerating and heading straight. You could definitely see something had disconnected there. That was, really unfortunate.
And I've just been running on board with him. He's got a fraction amount of left hand down. So that car's not 100% tracking straight. And we were just talking about him. He's in terms of the points at the moment. Well, he could jump out of the car, and that could be night over. He is going to continue on. 10 seconds behind him at the moment to the next car on track. He sits 23rd. So he is going to continue, and he's actually going to come into the pit lane as it currently stands. And I think he's okay. There's no meatball flag, and it's Brian Borg that's just up the road from him. So both of these drivers are going to come in, and he's going to continue. So you have to have a go, Sam. You can't give up, and he's certainly going to have a crack.
And that's what we touched on, being such a short series, you do just need to push on. Yes, your night's gone pear-shaped, but at the end of the day, grab as many points as you can, and that could be the deciding factor to get you in and out of this series. The other thing I want to touch on, this is Jared Filsell. We haven't seen much of him tonight, and I guess that's one of the pitfalls of being a race leader and having such a demanding lead, that he doesn't get too much airtime, but thankfully we're getting to see a little bit of that new paint scheme, and of course that announcement with Speed Cafe on board the car. But Jared he's in a league of his own, and I think he'd be a little bit bored at this stage, and just ticking off these laps when you know you've got a 14-second margin. That's pretty tidy.
Something going on for you, because is that margin starting to tick down just a little bit for Jared Filsell? Yeah, I think the margin's come back just a fraction at the moment, so Maloney might have a touch of pace. Filsell might be fuel saving. I mean, you're 15 seconds out in front. The worst thing that possibly can happen is for you to get that far out ahead and then something sort of happens. So covering all your bases is certainly important. You might be doing a little bit of that, but in the meantime, check out the battle that's on screen at the moment between Daniel Hall and Tyson Broad. And this is for 22nd and 23rd as it stands, as everyone starts to make their second pit stops. Lap 30 at the moment means that 17 laps left to run. And for these drivers, it will be the longer run of the night, will be the run to the checkered flag. McNamara and Sorono are in. So a few battles up and down the field, but it's sort of stalled out with those older tyres. But from 25th, so Tyson Broad and these guys sort of at the head of this sort of pack. It's the next cars in behind them is Ben Christensen. And then a number of drivers, Brody Sentence, Brian Borg, Ty Delaney are all sort of in a big battle pack as well.
Yeah, we can see a couple of cars now just starting to dive off into pit lane and take that last pit stop of the day. So, yeah, this is where we're going to start to see those changes, especially down through the back of the pack where it's a little bit closer. Oh, how's the attitude on this car? Just trying to get the power down. You can see how much it's moving around, but a lot of pressure. Oh, it's very tight up through this section. Don't want to be making a move through there. It's very much single file through that part of the racetrack.
Now, for Jacob O'Reilly, though, out of Perth, been racing for about 3 years on the simulator, 32 years of age. Teacher is his day job, and he says his best finish and something that he's most happy about in terms of sim racing, a fourth place finish at Jerez during the 2023 Scops season, one of the Ultimate V8 Supercar series. As Forza El Nabi says, yep, I'm going to go for an undercut on this one. That'll make my job just a fraction easier. And as he settles in terms of things, and there'll be a few drivers up and down the field that'll sort of be a little bit worried about starting to see the second round of pit stops. The last pit stop of the race, Jake, do you tend to leave it a little bit later knowing that you're going to be on lighter fuel, or you come a little bit earlier knowing the tyre wear is probably going to be lesser?
I think it really depends who you're racing. I know it's sort of a boring answer, but at the end of the day, sometimes the fastest way to, finish the race isn't the way that wins. You might need to, get track position at the right time. I think for someone like Jared Filsell, you're just going to run until, it's really safe to pit. At this point, you've got such a lead, it doesn't really matter. But for these other cars, a one-lap undercut might make a massive difference. With that 1 second you're going to gain, if you're in a pack of 3 or 4 cars, like the battle we're sort of seeing in the back half of the top 10, you might consider that one-lap undercut for sure.
And this might have something to do with we touched on the difference between Jared and Jake. We see Jared now, the pace that he's got, he's now finding himself in a fair bit of traffic. So that's something that he'll need to be cautious about. Doesn't want to trip over one of these back markers because he's got such a commanding lead.
Lap traffic will certainly be important in terms of things as the track temp continues to sort of chill down a little bit. It's lovely, cool afternoon in the French countryside, the French simulated countryside, of course. This track actually closes over the winter period as well in terms of things. So in terms of the simulated date, the earliest you can possibly put it out for is about the middle of March. It's about when they start their racing series back up over in France. Talking about service sessions and those sorts of things. And Ben Christensen's, who we're keeping half an eye on at the moment, because look at the battle pack that is in and around these guys at the moment. And Rattray White is still hanging on in that destroyed-looking race car, is managing to hold on here. And this is still a boatload of points. And by the way, he's completed his second stop, so he's going to undercut all these guys that are just sort of ahead of him.
And if he makes this field and for the season, this will be a round that he'll look back on. Yes, obviously his night's gone to custard as far as an amazing result, but to be able to just put his head down and grab whatever points he can, this could be an absolute game changer, and it could be something that we talk about throughout the year if he makes the cut for the championship.
By the way, somebody just said in chat, Jacob O'Reilly, they were talking about, school teacher. Of course, teaches lessons both in school and out on the racetrack. That's a good one. That's a cracker. Might have to put that in the notebook for the season. At the moment, Sandman, up and down the field, obviously Phil Cell's dominated at the moment. Is there anyone you've got your eye on that's sort of overperforming a little bit at the moment?
Oh, I don't know about overperforming. Everyone's sort of in a field of their own at the moment. I mean, no one's made any silly, stupid mistakes, so I think everyone's really holding their own at this stage. But the one thing that I do love about this series, though, and that this qualifying series, that it does bring names to the fold that we're probably not used to seeing. You touched on with people that may be known in different series, whether it be GT or stuff like that. And when they make the move to supercars, everyone's like, well, who's this? But at the end of the day, they've got not a bad record under their sleeve. So there's nothing that's standing out as we see Richard Hampstead, Bo Albert, now they're all in the pits now making these pit stops. So yeah, nothing at this stage, but definitely there's going to be some names that really make a name for himself come round 4.
I'll tell you what, in terms of things as well, if you're keeping an eye on the battle pack between Jake Maloney and Bo Albert before they come back out of the pit lane, the margin was out over 2 seconds. So provided Maloney pits on this next circuit by, the good news is he'll probably resurface in front of Bo Albert. And that will be quite capable at the moment, though. Forza El Nabi, with those fresh tyres, is making some pace, sneaks the new fastest lap of the race, and that will be a boatload of confidence for the driver who has seen some success in terms of Australian supercars racing. It's a name that everyone should know if you've been following different supercar series right up and around the nation over the last couple of years. He's another one of those drivers you keep an eye on. Connor Nixon's the next driver in behind there in the 168. Yet to pit. Richard Hampstead gets the job done as they get down to Adelaide, gets out the other side. Now Forza El Nabi's going to go crawling all over the Vermilion Sim Sports driver. And for Connor Nixon, hard charger award last week. This time, he's getting a little bit of a rough up from the veterans of the series.
What Forzan needs, there's been a lock up there for Hampstead in front, but what Forzan needs to be careful of is, yes, he's got that tyre advantage at the moment with a couple of these cars. He's got good pace, but he doesn't want to find himself in a situation where he makes nose-to-tail contact and gets a penalty, because he's found himself in a decent position at the moment. It's a nice bounce back from that 10-second penalty that he's received, and the last thing he needs to do is make a little mistake that could wipe his night right out.
Yep, so Connor Nixon's going to run long. And he'll be losing time as well as a part of this, because when you're being overtaken, you saw the long way you had to take around turn number 9. Ross is in. Maloney's going to continue in terms of things. So does Phil Sell as the final pit stops start to come your way from Circuit de Magny-Cours. Josh Thomas is in as well. Now we keep half an eye on how long does the driver of the 94 and Phil Sell, how long does the driver of the 29 in Maloney start to run, and how much ground can Bo Albert make?
I would imagine, what do you think, Jake? I think Maloney would probably go for as long as till he starts to get probably anywhere near some traffic, because the last thing he wants to do is be held up, I guess. So, you know, he knows he even had that little bit of a disadvantage with the undercut, overcut last time round. He was able to make that ground up and get the position done, but I guess the last thing he needs is to be held up by lap traffic.
Yeah, that's it. And I think we've seen, you know, the likes of Forzan and Richard learn that lesson the hard way in the last lap or two. So I think that'll certainly be on their mind. If you're in the shoes of Jared or Maloney, you know, unless anything goes totally wrong, you're qualifying for this series, and that's the objective. There's no trophy for winning this series, the qual series anyway. So I think it's just a matter of play it safe, keep yourself out of trouble. So I think that's what these guys are doing at the moment, using the space while they got it.
No, we're going to build a sheep station somewhere. It might be a Lego sheep station, but it will be a sheep station. I will do that. I will purchase a sheep station, even if it's fuel cell. I'll purchase a sheep station and mail it out to him. Here's your sheep station. Now go race for the real trophy.
It doesn't take much to fire up race car drivers, though, too. You put a race in front of them. Doesn't matter if you're going for points or a trophy or nothing at all. Everyone still wants to win.
Yep, we're all race car drivers. It's the old adage is try telling a race car driver to slow down. And you normally get met with a pretty stiff response of, yeah, that's not going to happen. At the moment, though, battle for 13th on screen at the moment. McNamara, Yusuf, Bilson and Stenberg. A little bit of the old mixes with a little bit of the new. Riley Bilson's been on the sim for a fair while, but he's still quite a young kid. He's been known in the past to be a little bit of a mouth attached to him, which he has cleaned up over the last couple of years, by the way. But that all comes with being younger, being into the computer gaming market. In terms of things, he has gotten better, and maturity is what he's going to need if he finds himself in the Logitech Pro Invitational to get results week in and week out. How do you deal with the younger drivers in and around things? Because it's not something you necessarily deal with a lot of at the higher echelons of real-world motorsports, Jake, but in the simulator, they're just about everywhere. They're crawling out of the woodwork.
Oh, I think it's very easy, you know, as someone who's been doing it a long time, to get your ego hurt when someone rocks up who's 13 or 14 years old and just spanks you. It's really it really gets to you. But at the end of the day, I think, you know, most of the veterans you see around have been doing it since they were very young as well. You know, I started racing the supercar and iRacing when I was 13, so I've been in those shoes. I think the key is, you know, no matter how old the driver you're racing with, is just not let them get in your head. Just focus and try and keep your eyes forward.
You joined when you were 13, Jake, did you?
Yeah, mate, you were commentating races on me when I was 13.
Oh,
I don't mean to.
Goodness, showing some age. As we see Jake Maloney in the pits. Wow. Yeah, there you go.
I made my first commentary appearance before I was 13. It might have been only for 1 or 2 races at my local motocross track. And I might have bothered the commentator whilst he was off for a lunch break. Can I take over that microphone, crap?
All right, so we see Jake's rejoined the racetrack, and he's in front of Bo. So he's got the best of both worlds now. He's got track position and a couple of lap fresher tyres. So providing that he doesn't make any mistakes, you'd think he'd be quite comfortable here in P2.
I'm wondering whether or not Bo Albert took a lot less fuel at that first stop as well, and now he's had to pay a little bit of that fuel bill back and has dropped out of things, but he won't be upset with the result. It'll be a good result. Now it'll be a little bit of a look backwards a little bit, just see where Forzan Nami is, just make sure you've covered him off. He's not going to come back at you real late on in the piece, and for right now, where he sits, it's you can only lose things from here, so it'll be park the bus a little bit for a number of these drivers. Phil Sell, Maloney, Albert will be among them. Richard Hampstead, you get the feeling, although at the moment in that battle that's resurfaced between himself and Jordan Ross, This battle is going to go all the way down the line, and we saw Hampstead was very good on his tyres in that first stint.
I think he'd be fairly comfortable too at this stage, and to see that he's got himself in P4 at the moment, he'd be quite chuffed with that. That's a decent amount of positions that he's made up throughout the night. So you can see in the graphic there, up 10 spots, and for him, it's all about just making the best of what will happen tonight. You know, he's obviously not on for the win, but it's a really good point stay, and that car's been good from the drop of the green flag as well.
Good point stay was what he needed at the outing too. He's managed to... Whoa! Well, we might have to stop talking about him because we focus in on the driver of the 28. It has a huge moment as he comes through the final chicane, and Jordan Ross will be quite keen to see a few more of those, and now he's really going to start to close up on in. The run down of the Adelaide hairpin this time by is certainly going to be interesting. And they will get reasonable drive off. He's close, but Hampstead got a better run off of turn number 3. Now the draft starts to take over. Now he starts to get a little bit of a run, but he's still too far back. And a lunge from there is only going to end in disaster for Jordan Ross. So they'll all sit down and they'll just take a half a breather. But how about this for a wriggle all over the track? As we're going to see the replay from Hampstead's point of view.
Whoa! How good was that? The one person that's loving this is Forzan, because this is all happening in front of him, and he's starting to tag onto the back of these guys, so he can see that there's a possibility of a couple of easy spots if these guys keep squabbling the way they are.
Yep, he'll just be lurking in the waters at the moment. As battles continue, McNamara is the battle pack we were talking about moments ago in behind him. And it's nearly becoming a four-way battle as well, because Jacob O'Reilly's starting to sneak into the background of this one. He's not slipping off the rear bumper of these guys by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, he sits in 7th at the moment, but it could be closing. Anything further happens, and we'll keep an eye on the gaps as they progress. As we get to the start-finish line this time by, Ross is still there. He's still right there. Anything could happen.
It's a good feeling, isn't it, Jake, when you tag onto the back of a group and you can see there's 3 cars in front of you, and you know you're just slowly starting to pull them in that little bit. You know the laps are winding away. You just sort of think to yourself, you know what, if these guys start battling and trip over themselves, I could be gifted a couple of spots there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, you know, especially for someone like Jacob O'Reilly, full disclosure, I wasn't fully aware of his sim racing exploits before these last couple races, but he's done an awesome job tonight. So, to finish 7th is going to be an awesome result for him. But if he could, capitalise on some errors and get that thing up in the top 5, that's awesome for him.
By the way, I'm just flipping through some of the questions we asked him about himself, just to learn a little bit more. Dream job, pro wrestler or a pro driver? He wouldn't complain about being a pro driver. How do you spend a day off? Playing golf, drinking a few beers with the lads, and other hobbies? Obviously, we just mentioned golf. He just took up snooker, and he said it's just as aggravating as golf. So how about that?
There you go. So ideally into his ball sports, but I tell you what, golf, or even snooker, I think I'd much rather have a crack at snooker than golf. Golf is, as much as I love it, that is one tricky sport.
At the moment, he's trying to get all of his balls lined up in a row at the moment. See if he can sink one into the corner pocket, one in the centre pocket, and then one straight back down the middle. Bounce a few times off the bumpers and into a corner pocket as well. Make for a nice little trick shot. That would be how he'd get his way into 4th spot. At the moment, still tagging off the back end of this one, but if Forznell Navi starts to get the elbows out a little bit with 8 laps left to run in this one, and anything could still happen. He's the best place of the Vermilion Motorsports drivers who have made a big splash in the V8 supercars of late. We've seen the number of drivers up and down the field. Sakarat Trey White was one of those cars. But new team in the offering, only come about in the last 12 months or so. And they're really starting to push their case forward in terms of things, Sandman. It's good to see new blood coming into the sim racing world.
Absolutely, and I touched on that earlier. When you've got a qualifying series like this and you get some new names in it, it's really good to see. And what Jake touching on, the names that you just haven't heard of, that you haven't been quite familiar with, it's really good. And it, like we were talking about before, with people that may be looking for an endurance drive, if they don't quite make the series, there's a chance of spotting some real talent out there, and it's good to see. You see Jared looks like he's finally decided to make it into pit lane too. He's going to have a pretty cruisy pit stop and then rejoin the lead.
Yeah, comes in nice and late, and you get the feeling he's not all that happy with Forza El Nabi going and nicking that fastest lap of the race off of him. This will be a late pit stop because he wants to go earn it back. So Phil Sell finally comes down to finish that one off. We've got battles for 4th. We've got battles for 9th. We've got battles up and down the field. One of the benefits of the qualifying series is seeing the breadth and the diversity of the drivers, their speeds, their abilities to put it all out there. And Matthew Bowler, who, bar a couple of slowdown penalties, 2 laps in a row, could be deeper inside this top 10. Was not happy with his performance out of Road Atlanta. He'll be happy with this one tonight, but there's still some boxes left to tick there, Jake. 2 slowdowns, lap 1, then lap 2, after a poor qualifying performance in round 1. He's in at the moment, but man, he'd love to be looking prettier.
That's it. But I guess, 2 rounds to go. Still a long way to go. To still be in the hunt is a solid effort. There's still a long way to go. 2 more races at 2 more tracks that we don't honestly know a huge amount about. That's another thing is, we've come to Magny-Cours tonight and it's thrown a few surprises at us with some, fairly interesting moments down at the hairpins. Well, think about how turn 1 at Fuji is going to be to finish this season off.
Yeah, that's Dave Kirby getting right out of the way. Lapped car at the moment, crawling around at the tail end of the field. We talked about the penalty he received very, very early on in the piece and not gone well for him. That might just be enough to see him on the outside. In terms of his standings, once again, as it currently stands, Bowler sits inside the top 10. 4th place, 3rd place tonight for Bo, but we'll see him all the way up in 5th place in terms of the overall standings. Forza El Nabi could be standing 1 spot further up the tree, bar a penalty at the moment, but still good enough. But it's this picture right here. And we're talking about Connor Nixon earlier on in the piece. Was sitting in 20th spot, was looking like he was on the inside. Well, now he's sitting on the outside. Seth Brown's managed to claw his way back through the field after multiple penalties. He's starting to make some inroads. He's starting to score some points. And Richard Hampstead sitting in 18th. Well, there's still some points in the offering for him as well.
Yeah, you'd think he'd be pretty keen to keep his position, but at the end of the day, if he happens to lose 1 or 2 spots, it's not the end of the world because it's still a decent night's finish. But a lot of these drivers up the front, I don't think they'll be too keen to make a desperate move because, like we said, it's only round 2 or 4. They've still got themselves in a decent points-paying position, so you're not going to be too worried about giving up a spot or 2.
Well, we're getting into the final run of things. 6 laps left to run. 24 or so kilometres left to run in this race. As it currently stands, it's been utter dominance from Jared Philsell. 1 round number 1. The moment, barring an absolute disaster, he's going to win round number 2 as well. But for Jake Maloney and Bo Albert, lots to take home from here. Lots of points on the card. Damien Johnson's had a really good night at the office. Scott Gamble's up 7 or 8 spots on the first round performance as well. Kurt Stenberg looks a little bit more solid. Ian Ford's look quite solid as well. There's a number of drivers where you start to sit there and go, yep, they've just about done all they need to as this battle pack continues to break loose out here, Sam.
Yeah, I saw McNamara getting on the power and that thing was sliding around, but Stenberg's looking a little bit racy there. I think he's keen to get that position done. But that was very much nose to tail into that braking zone, so I held my breath a little bit there while you were talking away. But yeah, it's just interesting to see how these guys start to battle. A couple of different racing lines. It's obviously their tyre lives are a little bit different, but they're all starting to think about it. And just as you touched on, Jared wasn't keen about losing that fastest lap, but he's gone out and pinched it now.
Yeah, it's like 2.5 tenths as well.
Yes, thank you very much.
It's not 4 tenths. It's not the qualifying 4 tenths, but no, it's still a big old stamp of authority from Phil Sell. But going to have to keep our eyes still on that battle for 4th spot because there's still points left available for those guys at the moment. Ross is still sitting there, not really been able to close all that much. And Forza El Nabi, since he's gotten all his way here, so there's sort of 2 battles we're keeping half an eye on at the moment. This is one of them. And the other one was right up at the pointy end of that field at 4th spot. He's closer again as Jordan Ross this time by. Forza El Nabi starting to make ground as well. Mid-corner speed for Forza El Nabi was good right there, but it was the corner exit he suffered, Sam, and that means he's not in position when they get down here to the hairpin.
Yeah, it'll make him just second guess as far as that
here we go.
zone. Oh, he's making a move up the inside. Is he going to go stuck? No, not quite. It's very, very close, but look at Forzan now. He's going to be sitting there watching these guys say, okay, boys, battle it out. I can pinch a couple of spots here.
A few drivers might have been sitting there and going, maybe it was a little bit of a snooze fest, and Jordan Ross has got other ideas. Now El Nabi's starting to close on into this one. It's not quite yet decided. The run down to turn number 9. Keep your eyes on the mid-corner speed here at the 097. That's where he looks strong. He was wide on the exit off of turn number 3. Didn't get the drive he wanted. If he did, there might have been a spot there. as he would have potentially gone around the outside of Ross, but now he'll be sat and watching once more. 5 laps left to run as Jared Filsell crosses the finish line, and you're excited about the curbs. I'm enjoying them whacking those curbs as well.
You can see the amount of air that Ross got, but don't know if it's going to hurt him or not, because at the end of the day, Forzan's very, very close. You can see, but the back of Ross's car too is just squirming around. I think Forzan will be seeing that and licking his lips, because the last thing you want to do is overheat these tyres, and that can be painful, can't it, Jake, when you're in a position where you're racing up against guys and you start to overheat those tyres.
That's exactly right. And like I said earlier about Richard, we saw it into that hairpin then. He is so hard to pass. When you're behind him, he just finds a way to get that little bit more out of the braking zone. Even if he runs himself a little bit wide, he just forces you to sort of overdrive the car. And that's a little bit what we're seeing from Jordan at the moment. He's trying so hard to get by Richard that he's actually murdering his own tyres while he's at it. And then he's going to be susceptible to Forzan. So, yeah, Richard, really tricky guy to get by.
Well, at the moment, Forzan El Nabi's looking a little bit pacey, and Jordan Ross just says, yep, not interested. On a bank some points. El Nabi takes another spot. That's the second time El Nabi's just been gifted a spot. Just gotten right out of the way, just said, yep, not worth it. Not interested in fighting this one. I haven't got tyres to deal with at the moment. I can lock in 6th, and that's better than losing it all the way down into the high teens.
Yeah, good heads-up racing there. You know, at the end of the day, if it's just one position, yeah, it's not going to break the bank as such, but how's this pressure here between these three? You can see just how hungry, like, Denny's moving around too. Like, he's keen to get the job done. It's getting really close between these three, and at the end of the day, there's still 4 laps to go.
Oh, hang on.
3.5.
Hang on. Anthony Visma, I think, just requested a tow. I'm pretty sure Anthony Visma's parked up at the moment. We might have a safety car late in the piece.
Oh, goodness. Yep, there he is. He's out of harm's way, though. I'd be interested to... Yeah, I don't think they'll throw a caution for that.
Yeah, it was just too late in the race.
Yeah, it was lucky that position in the racetrack too. You know, he was out of the way, so at the end of the day, these guys get to race on, and so there'll be a couple of people just breathing a sigh of relief there.
Well, we'll find out whether or not it's going to be contact or whether or not it's self-inflicted. Could be downshift. Might blow the engine. There's a car parked off way on the... Yeah, it's a downshift.
Yeah, lunched it big time.
What's the story with the other car there, though?
That wasn't one of the Delaney's, was it? Might have been Blake Delaney.
I think it was a TTR car.
Oh. We're hearing reports that it might have been Aaron Borg. Oh, that thing is looking fairly used up too.
Yeah, curious what's happened there, because Borgie was having an okay run on that first lap spin as well, and that thing's toasted.
Yeah, major damage to that. So, yeah, unfortunately, these nights gone from bad to worse. But, yeah, wow.
Oh, he swapped ends, bouncing over the curb in the Nürburgring chicane. And he was battling along with Seth Brown at the point in time of that incident. And was sitting in 28th spot last time that he sort of come by. And now it's nearly going to be a DNF as he jumps through. There it is. That's the moment on the chicane. And as it landed, it just pointed itself at the wall on the right-hand side. Nothing he could have done. Yeah, that's unreal. I was saying how much I was enjoying the cars bouncing over the curbs like that, but yeah, when it fires you into the fence, that's ugly. But unfortunately, he's got major damage, and there's that engine just on the downshift, lost an engine, and that's night over. Well, late on, a few mistakes starting to come through the piece, so concentration in a 200-kilometre race is certainly a big factor that's important. And don't forget, a number of drivers competing from New Zealand as well, where it's just before midnight. Zach Rattray White was one of them, but there's a number of drivers within the field that actually are coming to us from the other side of the pond, and fatigue is definitely a factor for those drivers. What are you doing, Jake? Do you get in Hampstead's ear and tell him to fight, or do you just let him move over and get Forzan to get the spot?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think Richard will ever go down without some kind of fight. I think there's no way he's going to let him have it. But at the same time, I don't think either of these guys are going to take too much risk. I think it's, at this point, you're scoring a big amount of points, whether it's 4th, 5th or 6th. And, you just got to be in the top 20, really. So I think these guys are thinking about round 1. They're not too worried about this quali series, so just get it done. Forzan El Nabi. 2 laps left to run as it currently stands. Well, that's because Jared Filsell, I think, is just about... Yeah, Jared Filsell's heading down to the final couple corners. There will be 2.5 laps left to run for Filsell.
As he'll cross, I'm sure this isn't the last lap of the race. Oh, you know what? It will be the last lap of the race for Jared Filsell as he comes across, takes the white flag, will be in the air. One more lap left to run from Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours. For the driver that stuck it on pole, he's disappeared into the sunset, never once looked back, and I doubt the competition have had much look at him all night long. But for these guys that are sitting back here in fourth spot, it's been a little bit of a scrap through the field for both Richard Hampstead and Forza El Nabi, after both of them didn't necessarily set their best show of hands in qualifying. Dramas for both of them as they jump through the chicane for the second last time tonight. And here comes Forza El Nabi. He's not done with things, and Hampstead's going to cover him to the inside. Might be too wide as they get it down to turn number 1. Looking for the crisscross right now. Gives him a hurry up and a whack at turn 1. Now it becomes turn 2.
That's what I touched on before. The last thing he wants to do is get himself in a bit of drama. Forzan doesn't want any nose-to-tail contact and get a last late race penalty. You know, I think that all started with Hampstead. He had trouble just before the chicane. Looked like he's a little bit wide, and he's just got to be careful and stop this charge. Forzan's going to have a real crack maybe around the outside.
And it's not just Forzan, it's Jordan Ross that's buying into this one as well. So for Jordan, let Forzan El Nabi go. Now looking for another crisscross, the driver, the 097. Job's not done. Not for any of these guys. Last lap of the second race of the qualifying series. Richard Hampstead, he'll need to think to himself, I've got to put some points on the board. So that will probably be the key factor as he runs his way down to turn number 9.
Oh, pitched a break there too. Just tried. He hasn't given up, but I think now at this point of the racetrack, he's just lost a tiny little bit of margin with that lock front, and I think that might go in the way of Hampstead now. But here we go. Jared Filsell comes out of the last corner, takes the checkered flag. It's been a textbook race for Filsell, and what an amazing race it's been in his brand new colours, the Speed Cafe.
Yeah, one race in those colours, one race win for Jared Filsell. One more step on progression back to the Invitational for this time around. And for the drivers that are running their way through, Jake Maloney picks up P2. Bag of points for the driver of the 29. And Bo Albert, doesn't he return to the Australian sim racing scene in style? He's been out of the wheel for a while, comes home in P number 3, and that group still finishes the way they sort of travelled, albeit it's going to be one spot further back for Forza El Nabi. Jordan Ross did manage to nick that spot away from him on the last lap, gets P5. Stenberg's grabbed a spot here as well in the dying stages of this one, and in Ford up to 14th. So it'll be a number of drivers inside the top 10 happy with their finishes as they're going to look to cross the line. Not quite parked it up. Final couple corners for Riley Bilson. Is still going to get to the start-finish line, and he will get that race over and done with, and he was hanging on to that thing by the thinnest of margins. This is a little battle pack between Blake Delaney and Chad Lewis, just outside the 20s as it currently stands. Switch back for Chad Lewis. This is the run down to turn number 15. Great drive off of turn 14. He'll get the inside line down here, but there's a little bit of a kink to the left. Delaney's going to pinch him across to the center of the road. Look to open up the braking zone. Not done. They're going to go side by side to the final chicane. Little bit of the bumper used, little bit of rubbing. Lewis backs out. Delaney slips on through, and what a battle to the line for these guys.
How good was that? Nice little battle through to that chicane. That was anyone's, and it could have gone pear-shaped really quickly too, but what an amazing job. Those guys had a great little battle towards the end. And there's Filsell. He's tearing it up, enjoying the win. It was absolute dominance from him tonight. No one was going to touch him, and he'd be pretty chuffed with that.
Well, settling down in terms of things, there's a number of drivers starting to celebrate as they put points away. Round number 2, Magny-Cours. It was a night where Filsell just utterly dominated in every stretch of the imagination, but how about the number of drivers that have been around the sim racing scene? It was nearly a race where the experienced and wizened heads really showed the racecraft that they've put together over a number of years on the sim there, Sam. And it was the bigger heads, the smarter heads, the racing brains that came to the fore.
Yep, loved it. It was a good race, and at the end of the day, there wasn't a safety car that made a bit of a meal of it. So at the end of the day, it was really down to some great racing, some good strategy, and I think we saw an absolute ripper tonight.
Well, results starting to come your way as we'll get them up on your screen in just a few moments. 20 seconds it was in the end for Jared Filsell. 46 laps in the bank. Well, it was still less than half a second a lap, his competition might say, but that is some margin when you consider things. Jake Maloney comes home P number 2. Bo Albert, a little bit of a distant P3, showed a strong set of race pace for him. Richard Hampstead is going to grab himself 10 spots from 14th on the grid to 4th overall. Jordan Ross, a couple spots further up, will be quite happy with that one. Forzen Nabi drops a number of spots from that penalty. Still manages to just about come away with P5, finishes 6th overall. Jacob O'Reilly, good race for him. He'll be very happy with that. Damien Johnson, Scott Gamble inside the top 10. And Matty Bowler rounds out your top 10. Moving over the page to P number 11, it'll be Sean McNamara, who'll be very, very happy with that finish from Andre Youssef in terms of things. 9.5 Simsport from Altus Esports Australia. Trans-Tasman car of Kurt Stenberg, you saw a lot of him on screen tonight. He'll be quite happy with that finish. Ian Ford, another of the ERT cars, ahead of Riley Bilson for 9.5 Simsports. Josh Thomas, another ERT car. Teo Serrano for Altus Esports. Connor Nixon gets inside the 20 this week for Million Motorsports. Brady Baldwin and Hayden Veld will round out your top 20. And Sam, to take us through the next 20.
Brian Borg in 21st, Michael White in 22nd. Zachary, with his issues that he had, managed to get home in 23rd. Chad Lewis in 24th. Craig Schultz in 25th. Daniel Hall in 26th. Blake Delaney, 27th. Seth Brown, 28th. Brody Stentz in 29th. And Zach Volbossum in 30th. Incredible night, isn't it? Like, if you go through all these statistics and see where everyone's finished, there's some people had their ups and downs, but it was an absolute cracking race around Magny-Cours.
Yeah, consistent driving up and down the field. It was cracking. I enjoyed actually watching the cars bounce around. A lot of curbs for the cars to climb over and turn to things. And we'll chat to drivers as we can up and down the field. I'm sure we were wanting to chat to our podium. I can guarantee there'll be a big sigh of relief from Bo Albert. I'm back. He'll probably be thinking to himself at the moment, I'm confident I've shown what I'm capable of. And that was a big one, but that was a statement drive from Phil Sell. Yeah, it was, wasn't it? We saw his pace in practice, and then he sort of iced everyone up in qualifying to have that 4/10 margin, and pretty much he was just in a league of his own tonight. He had clear air, he had no one harassing him, and at the end of the day, to finish with that margin of 20 seconds is pretty impressive. So at the end of the day, he's done everything right so far, 2 out of 2 on the trot, and yeah, like Jake said on a number of times, he's definitely one of those guys that are already starting to think about round one. In terms of things, we might just jump and do a little bit of a quick run through the points as we currently stand. And remember, for everyone watching along at home, that these will be provisional points as they stand currently, because penalties and things may still yet to come through. Jared Philstell's raced 2 races, 2 wins to his name, and he stands atop the pile with 400 points on the board. Maloney moves to 2nd place in terms of the overall standings. Forzen Nabi, good drive tonight alongside Jordan Ross as well. 3rd and 4th for the Synergy Sim Racing pair. Bo Albert at the moment says privateer next to his name. You can stick a big old Evolution Racing team next to that one, as he's switched back to that partnership that has benefited him in the past. Sits in 5th place. Jacob O'Reilly, the first of a million Simsports cars inside the 10 as well. Sean McNamara, Ian Ford, Matty Bowler, and Scott Gamble for WKMP Simsports. Wanted to finish consistently, did so. Tied on points as well for 9th and 10th spot, both on 276. So, number of drivers sitting there standing quite well in terms of things. Teo Serrano, Kurt Stenberg, Damien Johnson, Josh Thomas, Andre Youssef, Zach Trey White does score enough points provisionally to stay inside the top 20. That will be very, very important towards his case as well. Brady Baldwin, Richard Hampstead, Seth Brown, and Brian Borg are your 20 as it currently stands. On the outside, looking in terms of results, this will be a big picture. Connor Nixon's only a couple points out, but sits tied with Michael Taliancic, 21st spot, even on the board. Hayden Veld and Riley Bilson a little bit outside before Griffin Gardner. 1 race in the book, 190 points on the board, only 20 points outside. Still a big, big shot in terms of things. Michael Whiting's right there, as is Job Stewart, also missing tonight's racing action. Driver the 35. Daniel Hall, Aaron Borg, and Craig Schultz, your 30. Although Craig Schultz is going to be 70 points back and quite distant. Time to get into our interviews though, Sandman. I believe you've got our race winner standing by.
Joining me now, congratulations, Jared Philsell. Absolutely dominant night tonight. It looked pretty cruisy from our seat. How about yours?
Yeah, I quite like this track, to be honest. Like, it just clicked straight away, so we had a good setup underneath us. We honestly didn't change anything really. Just drove the thing, found time that way. But yeah, I really like the track. It's got great flow. Not sure how it would race. I'd have to go back and watch the broadcast, but I think it would be okay. It's I quite like it.
And a nice way to debut some new colours on the car too, mate.
Yeah, perfect start really. Silly me, forgot to put a spec map on, so it doesn't quite look as good as it should on the broadcast, unfortunately. But we'll get that sorted for next week.
Well, something to look forward to for next week. But speaking of next week, now obviously it's been the perfect start for you, 2 out of 2. Yeah, Jake mentioned it a couple of times throughout the broadcast. There's a number of people, you included, that would be pretty much now just thinking about preparations for round number 1 at this stage, you'd imagine.
Yeah, yes and no. Still got a race. I quite like the next 2 tracks coming up as well. Very different to what we're generally used to, but it's quite refreshing to drive something new every now and again. Get some motivation to do some laps and not get a setup that's been in the recycling bin for a long time.
Yeah. Now, speaking of setups, was it a bit of a head scratcher this time for a racetrack that we don't know too much about?
Yes and no. We generally have a direction that we like to go, and this one worked out really, really well. Yeah, it's very different to last week, but no, we definitely found something with the setup. This week, everyone found time in the testing, which was good.
Well, before we let you go, mate, obviously there's going to be, there's definitely one more person that you want to thank for this time round. Go for it.
Oh yeah, obviously Speed Cafe jumping on this year. It's great to have them on board, as well as Ryko, a little secondary sponsor on the car there. Doesn't really stand out much on the green-eyed monster that I've got, but with thanks to those guys and all the boys at Lobs Esports for the prep that they've put in and helped me get up to speed. They don't have to jump on and do laps, but it's nice that they jump on and keep somewhat active before round 1. It's always important to not fall out of the chair in that respect. And it's also nice to hear you back commentating again, Sandman.
Oh, thank you very much, mate. And good to see you out there winning away too. Well done, mate. It was a great race tonight. Looking forward to catching up with you for the next week. But until we speak to you next time, congratulations, mate. Well done, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, mate.
Yeah, Scotty, well done from Jared. That was really a strong performance. But now you're joining someone else in the commentary box who finished P2 on the night.
Yeah, and driver the 29 for Jake Maloney, mate. Obviously, a little bit of a distant P2, but in terms of things, big banker points on offer. You ticked all the boxes, no big mistakes. Pit stop strategy was nice and clean, and that's what this really is. For you guys, it's nearly a hit out. Test everything, make sure we're in the rhythm, we're in the right spot, pace is reasonable, everything sort of tick, 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 tick thus far.
Yeah, that's it. Pretty much gone to plan so far this quali series. 4th and 2nd in the first 2 rounds, probably pretty close to locking me into the season, I think. Would have to go pretty bad in the next 2 rounds from here to not make it. So yeah, all to plan, and yeah, missed a bit of pace at Jared, but it was good racing with Bo and Forzan, and on to the next round.
Mate, in terms of things, those guys there, they had a little bit of pace there. Obviously, Forzan had a penalty to come his way, had to come back through. That was in the mind early on. You would have been very, very aware that probably Forzan had that 10-second penalty to serve, not race him too hard. You want to race Bo, you certainly want to be in there and you want to be amongst it, but at the same time, I've just got to check this box. P2 versus P3, it's a couple points. It's not worth throwing away 30, 40, 50, 100 points over.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's sort of a tough one because you want to race and you don't really want to just circulate, but look, had a few good battles with Bo and Forzan, but I think for most of us guys at the front, we're just sort of banking the points we can and moving on to the series, hopefully.
Next time out, we'll be heading over to the German side of things. We've got Hockenheim's the next one up for us before we'll journey over to Japan and Fuji. Hockenheim, a little bit more difficult to probably go racing at, although, the downforce areas, there is a big hairpin, quite similar to here, very similar to the Adelaide hairpin we've got out. A little bit better racetrack and go racing, but then Fuji, that's one where, huge draft trains, fuel savings important. What's the practice and preparation been like for the final 2?
None as of yet. But I know Hockenheim, last time we raced there in the main series, we were very, very fast and had a podium lockout and was on the podium there in the main series. So, yeah, hopefully more of that in the next round. And, hopefully just push on and get into the main series.
Mate, finally, I know it's obviously been a rough 2023, but this is a really, really good way to start 2024. Who are the sponsors that make it possible? Who keeps you trucking through an off-season like this?
Yeah, no, just a big thanks to everyone at TTR. It's good fun practicing with everyone this week and getting back into it this year and VRS. And, just congrats to Jared and all the auto action guys.
Mate, congratulations. Thank you for joining us, and go celebrate that P2. And like you said, that might just be enough to get you across the line in terms of things already.
Cheers, Scott. Thanks.
Finally, Sandman, you're going to be talking to a driver who I spoke to last week and said, yeah, it's been a time away. Never thought I'd be back and I'd be sitting behind the wheel of a V8 supercar. Sandman with Bo Albert.
Bo, congratulations. A bit that Scott touched on with his talk there. That was a great little battle in those opening laps. And then throughout the entire night, that battle for second and third, you must have really enjoyed that. It looked like fun from the commentary box.
Yeah, no, that was definitely a lot of fun following, the experienced guys such as Jake Maloney. Of course, we had Forzan in that first stint as well. They were having a great little battle, so it was a lot of fun. And, I wish I got to get stuck into it a little bit more. They were just a little bit ahead of me and, being in the top 5 at that point in the race, I decided to play it a bit safe, not get too involved and just think long game. But, some good little laps there, and I enjoyed the whole race as well, having Maloney there as a little sort of bartering stick, so to say. Of course, a reference to follow, sort of match his pace. So that made the race go a lot quicker than I thought.
And you would have licked your lips a little bit too, knowing that Forzan, unfortunately, he had that penalty that he had to serve throughout the race. So that takes the pressure off you, knowing that you don't really have to worry about that battle that was, with yourself and Jake. But, a safety car could have changed that, but it didn't. So it was nice to probably just not have to worry about him, and then you could sort of focus on Jake, I would imagine.
Oh, you'd like to think that, wouldn't you? But someone doesn't read the race control chat from time to time, and I had no idea what happened to Forzan. So here I was stressing about a car I probably didn't need to in the end. But it's a shame what happened to Forzan. It's so easy to do in qualifying with 45 cars on track. So I feel bad for him. We've all come very close to doing it. I had some close calls myself tonight. But I thought he was in the race for tonight, and he still was in the race, really. At the end of the day, it's Forzan El Nabi. He's got pace. He's incredibly quick. So it didn't matter how much of a lead I had after that first set of pit stops. You always know Forzan's going to come charging back.
Absolutely. Sounds like you need someone on the radio, mate, just to sort of give you that little bit of information so you can keep your heart rate down throughout that race.
Yeah, probably. Look, there was a few guys who offered to be my spotter tonight, but I'm a big fan of the deafen button when it comes to these kind of races. I like to sort of do my own thing, not from any weird standpoint or anything. It's just more the talking often distracts me, so I like to get my head down and focus on the job at hand.
Well, you did everything right, mate. Regardless of whether you thought Forzan was going to come back and stress you out, you did a great job. You handled that nicely. It was a brilliant battle to watch between yourself and Jake. And before we let you go, mate, is there anyone you want to thank?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, a massive shout out to you guys at SimSpeed TV for the broadcast. You always do a fantastic job, and it's great to see you guys on board with this series. A massive shout out as well to Logitech G as a personal partner on my 06 Mustang, and also their support of the series as well. They have some of the best gaming peripherals on the market, and it's awesome to see their support in sim racing day in and day out. And lastly, just a big thank you to everyone who helps out behind the scenes with this series. They do a fantastic job, and it's no surprise it's one of the premier series in Australia.
Well done, mate. Good to talk to you on the podium. Well deserved, mate. It was a brilliant drive, and mate, bring on next week. Looking forward to seeing how you tackle the next one.
Absolutely. Cheers, guys.
There you go, Bo Albert. A pretty great race for him tonight. Finishing off at the podium, and I think we were treated nicely there, Scott. I think it was a great round and still plenty of good racing.
Yeah, certainly plenty of good racing, but Stewart's had a lot to sort of deal with in terms of the background. Well, this trip to France is now signed, sealed, and delivered. Next week on Valentine's Day is going to bring us a race that some are either going to love, some are going to fall in love with, and some are going to be walking away wondering why they even climbed in the rig to begin with. That is what you've got looked forward to from Hockenheim, 7:45 p.m. next week. Who will be the drivers that walk away with that with one ticket punched, and the other one's starting to rack up for every trip to the round of Logitech Invitational next week? Well, there'll be some drivers that'll be sitting here after tonight going, yeah, it's all to do. And some drivers with everything just about locked up. In terms of things, it was a great night of action from Circuit de Magny-Cours. On behalf of Logitech, on behalf of SimSpeed, on behalf of everyone that makes the Logitech Pro Invitational Series possible, thank you everyone for watching along at home. We'll see you next week for more racing action from the Logitech Pro Invitational Qualifying Series.